Chapter 750. I'll uphold justice for you, let's go take a look. Shao Qingyuan jumped down from the shaft, and so did Yundong. The two of them took a few steps forward and arrived at the entrance of a school. Wasn't this school the one Mo hall where she had sent Yunshu over, but was not satisfied with that pedantic teacher? Dan was indeed studying here. However, the current Dan was standing outside the school, shouting that he had been wronged. His book basket had fallen to the ground, and he did not have time to pick it up. His face was filled with stubbornness, but his eyes were red. He seemed to want to enter the school again to look for the master, but he was stopped by the gatekeeper. There were still a few students standing behind the door, pointing and laughing at him. Yundong's expression darkened. She immediately pushed aside a bystander and called out, Dan. Dan turned his head. When he saw that it was Yundong, the emotions that he had been suppressing instantly collapsed. As if he finally had someone to rely on, he burst into tears. Large drops of tears fell. Sister Yundong. Yundong quickly took 2 steps forward, squatted down, patted his shoulder, and wiped his tears with a handkerchief. What's wrong? What happened? Tell me. I'll help you. For a moment, Dan cried a little hard and couldn't stop. Therefore, before he could speak, a few students behind the door started shouting loudly. He stole something. He stole 50 copper coins, and was chased out by the teacher. Dan immediately shook his head with all his might. He wanted to explain, but he hiccuped. He was immediately angry and anxious, and his tears fell even more fiercely. Yundong hurriedly patted him. There's no hurry. Tell me slowly. I believe you didn't steal anything. Dan had been in denial for most of the day. Yundong was the first person to say that she believed him without any explanation. All the grievances seemed to be unimportant at that moment. Someone believed in him. There was no need for him to say anything. There was no need for any evidence. Someone stood on his side without any worries. Dan felt that it was enough. His emotions gradually stabilized. Although he was still sobbing, he could clearly say something. I didn't steal it. I really didn't. My father gave me those 50 copper coins. My father said that I've been studying very hard recently, and that I've improved. He rewarded me and told me to buy what I wanted. I just haven't thought of what to buy, so I kept those 50 copper coins with me. It's useless. He wiped his face. But today Shaoquan suddenly said that he had lost money. Then they searched everywhere. In the end they found 50 copper coins in my book basket and said that I had stolen it. Teacher. The teacher said that I was immoral and had a bad character. He chased me out of the school. My 50 copper coins were also taken away. As he spoke, he felt aggrieved again. Dan couldn't take it anymore and cried. When the others heard this, they whispered to each other. However, the few students behind the door shouted, You were the one who stole it. How could you say that your father rewarded you? Who doesn't know that you're a poor boy from the countryside? Is your father so generous that he gave you 50 copper coins to spend as you please? No one will believe this. That's right, that's right. If your father really dotes on you, would he be willing to let you work for the family every weekend? The teacher has already told you several times to focus on your studies and not be affected by other things, but you refuse to listen. Just the rise of 1 place on the ranking was considered improvement? Is your father willing to give you so much money? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 751. Tear down your school. I got 3rd place last time. My father only gave me 5 copper coins to buy candy. My family owns a shop in town. How dare your father give you 50 copper coins? Are you kidding me? You stole Shaoquan's money. Don't deny it. It's useless even if you call your sister over. Do you think she dares to settle scores with the teacher? Our teacher is an elementary scholar, and your sister is just a country bumpkin. The veins on Yundong's forehead throbbed as she listened. Dan was even more anxious. Not only did these people scold and slander him, they even slandered Sister Yundong. They were too much. However, Shao Qingyuan raised his head and looked at the students with a sharp and cold gaze. Among the few students, The oldest was only 13 or 14 years old. Once Shao Qingyuan became ferocious, he could even scare an adult man, let alone these bookworms who only knew how to act tough and never see the world. Immediately, someone trembled and took a few steps back. The others suddenly stopped shouting and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Niudan looked at Yundong uneasily. Sister Yundong, it's fine. I'll seek justice for you. Putting aside the fact that Niudan often came to her house and called her elder sister all day long, his enthusiastic look made Yundong treat him as a younger brother. He had such a good relationship with Yinshu. His father worked in her workshop, and his grandfather was Chun Liang. She could not ignore it. No matter what, she had to clear his name and take back the money that belonged to him. Yundong believed that Niudan had 50 copper coins as pocket money. This was the red packet she had given Chen Jinbao. At that time, she heard Chen Jinbao mutter that Niudan had been improving in his studies recently, and he would give him a reward. She patted Niudan's shoulder and stood up. She looked at the gatekeeper and said, "Call your teacher out." The gatekeeper snorted. "You think you can tell me what to do?" The gatekeeper seemed to be different from the one Yundong had seen before. Compared to this, the gatekeeper from last time was much more polite. Shao Qingyuan saw his arrogant look and suddenly took 2 steps closer to him, kicking the door behind him. "Go and call him." "You, how dare you? Do you know what this place is?" Shao Qingyuan looked at him coldly. "I'll give you 10 seconds. If I don't see the teacher, I'll tear down your school." The gatekeeper's expression changed. Seeing that the man did not seem to be joking, he could only point at him with a trembling finger. You wait." Then he quickly turned around and stumbled to call for help. Niudan looked at Shao Qingyuan in a daze. He used to be very afraid of him. He had personally seen Shao Qingyuan throw a child into the water and almost drown him. After listening to Yunshi's brainwashing, his impression of Shao Qingyuan changed slightly, but he was still afraid. Who knew that Sister Yundong would be engaged to him? Niudan felt that this was like a dream. For this reason, he didn't dare to go to the Gu family for a few days. Later on, even if he went to the Gu family and often met Shao Qingyuan, he never spoke to him. However, he did not expect that one day, this man called Wolf Cub would actually stand in front of him. He was so tall and majestic, like a mountain, as if he could help him block all the wind and rain. Niudan felt that he was actually not scary at all. He felt that he had let the man down by calling him a wolf cub in the past. He felt a little sad. At this moment, the gatekeeper came out with the master of the academy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 752. Your request is strange. Before the teacher reached the door, he said angrily, "Who dares to cause trouble here?" The gatekeeper followed behind him. He pointed in the direction of Shao Qingyuan and Yundong and added fuel to the fire. "It's them. They seem to be Chen Jingwen's siblings. They heard that Chen Jingwen was chased out of the school and came over to defend him. Chen Jingwen did such an unbearable thing and didn't allow anyone to say it. That man almost kicked the door down." The other students, who were so frightened by Shao Qingyuan that they did not dare to speak, also went forward to complain as if they had found a backer. "That's right, teacher. They're barbarians. No wonder Chen Jingwen dared to steal money. It's because his family has such a brother and sister who can't differentiate right from wrong." His sister also said that no matter what Chen Jingwen said, she would believe him. The master's expression was ugly. He stood at the door in a few steps. He glanced at Shao Qingyuan, then his cold gaze landed on Niudan. He was a teacher after all. Niudan was a little afraid of him, and subconsciously took a small step back. Yundong sneered and took 2 steps forward. She looked at the teacher and said, "The teacher is here. That's good. I want to ask, do you have any evidence that our Chen Jingwen stole someone else's money?" The teacher frowned. He did not talk to women. Hence he looked at Shao Qingyuan. "Are you Chen Jingwen's brother?" Shao Qingyuan couldn't even be bothered to look at him. The teacher immediately said angrily, "I'm talking to you. Don't you even know the most basic etiquette?" Shao Qingyuan finally gave him a look and said, "She's talking to you. Are you deaf?" You. The teacher was so angry that his chest heaved. After a long while he said, I don't talk to women. I don't talk to brainless people. Yundong almost laughed out loud. Shao Qingyuan's mouth was so sharp. She secretly applauded him. You're saying that I'm brainless? I'm an elementary scholar. I'm a dignified elementary scholar. I'm rich and knowledgeable. To be able to teach here, compared to a country bumpkin like you, our difference is simply heaven and earth. You actually say that I'm brainless. Yundong finally could not help but laugh. This is the first time I've heard someone praise themselves so exaggeratedly in front of so many people without batting an eyelid. How shameless. What did you say? This time he was willing to talk to the woman. Yundong smiled. As expected, you're deaf. I say you're shameless. Say that again. Yundong was surprised. This is the first time I've heard such a strange request. Since you're so sincere, I'll reluctantly repeat again. I say you're shameless. The teacher was so angry that he almost fainted. If not for the gatekeeper supporting him from behind, he would have fallen to the ground and made a fool of himself. However, he was still so angry that he could not say a word. Yundong asked, Can we talk nicely now? If not, I want stand on ceremony. The teacher's expression became even uglier. This was a threat, a threat. He did not expect this woman to be so shameless and despicable at such a young age. Then I'll ask again. Why did the teacher conclude that Chen Jingwen stole the 50 copper coins? Why did he think that the 50 copper coins were not given to him by his father? Where's the evidence? On the basis that he has a criminal record and is a habitual thief. Before the teacher could speak, a cold shout suddenly came from inside. Immediately after, Yundong saw a familiar figure walk out. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 753. Unworthy of being a teacher. After the figure came out, the teacher immediately stepped forward and asked, Madam, why are you here? Madam Sun said, I heard that a woman was present. I thought that you would definitely be troubled, so I came out to take a look. The teacher sighed and nodded. That's true. This woman is very tricky. Yundong almost burst out laughing when she heard that. Were the two of them out of their minds? Would he be put in a difficult position just because she was present? Was it difficult for her to ask 2 questions? Madam Sun had already turned around and looked straight at Yundong. She said, If you have any questions, you can ask me. You don't have to hold on to my husband. Yundong chuckled. Who was holding on to your husband? It was as if she had taken a fancy to this old man. This woman felt too good about herself. All right, since you two are husband and wife, I want stand on ceremony. Her eyes darkened. That moment of coldness actually made Madam Sun a little afraid. Did you just say that Chen Jingwen is a habitual thief? Yundong sneered. What else has he stolen? Since such a thing has happened in the past, why didn't you deal with it in the past and chase him out of school? Madam Sun did not expect her to hit the nail on the head the moment she spoke. She immediately choked. After a moment, she raised her chin slightly and said, In the past, it was because there was no evidence. You call him a habitual thief without any evidence? Yundong was simply shocked by their train of thought. So this is what you teach here? Just because Chen Jingwen is a country boy, he is the suspect whenever anything is stolen. Then, he's called a habitual thief without any evidence showing that he stole anything. Then based on that, he's guilty again when some student lost something. And he's chased out of school without even having the chance to explain himself. Yundong burst out laughing and looked at the surrounding crowd. Did you hear that, everybody? I thought that the teacher of this Wenhuo Hall was just pedantic. Now I realize that he's not pedantic, but blind, paranoid, arrogant, irresponsible, and self-righteous. Teacher? Can someone like him be a teacher? If his students become high scholars and officials in the future, they will make groundless judgments based on their guesses too, right? How many innocent people will go to prison? This is simply disregarding human lives. The onlookers couldn't help but nod. That's right. The teacher and his wife said that the child was a thief, but where was the evidence? To be honest, I used to think that this teacher was different from the other teachers I saw in other schools. He was always mysterious. When a woman brought a child to his door, he looked like he had seen a rat or a cockroach. It was as if everyone would like him. I think so too. I don't think the teachers of the other schools are as hard to satisfy as him. This girl is right. They're spreading this news without any evidence. Just now, this child was crying so miserably over there. One look, and you can tell that he was wronged. This teacher is like a dog. Look at what that Madam Sun is saying. Habitual thief? So it's all based on their own guesses. Then if my family lost a chicken, can it be said that they stole it? Anyway, I saw her pass by my house, so I guess so. When Madam Sun heard the dissatisfied voices of the surrounding crowd, she saw that they were all standing on Gu Yundong's side. She immediately said angrily, But I have witnesses. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 754. The so-called witness. As soon as he said that, the whispers in the surroundings instantly stopped. Everyone looked at each other. Witness. Gu Yundong also raised her eyebrows. Witness? Where are they? Madam Sun sneered and shouted into the door. Sister-in-law Wu, tell me, is this Chen Jingguan dirty? Did he steal your things in the past? There was no movement inside the door for a long time. After a long time, a figure slowly walked out. Gu Yundong was stunned. It was her? Qingyuan's husband, Wu Chang's mother. Madame Wu dawdled to Madam Sun's side. Madam Sun looked at Gu Yundong and said, Madam Wu's daughter-in-law is Chen Jingguan's cousin. The last time her son got married, Chen Jingguan also went. In the end, there were a few gifts missing from the house. Later, they found out that Chen Jingguan took them all. Isn't he used to stealing? Chen Jingguan was also stunned. Of course he knew Madame Wu. After hearing Madam Sun's words, he hurriedly shook his head and said, I didn't take her things at all. Gu Yundong found it extremely funny. She looked at Madame Wu coldly. I'll say it again. Where's the evidence? Madame Wu felt a little guilty. She stammered and whispered, It's been so long. Where's the evidence? Oh, so this is still your guess? Madame Wu could not raise her head. Gu Yundong's teasing gaze landed on the teacher. The way Master Wen handles things is really impressive. On one hand, he says that he doesn't talk to women, but on the other hand, he can suspect his student of stealing and chase him out of the school because of a woman's unreasonable guess. The teacher trusts this Auntie Wu very much. I'm impressed. Master Wen's expression changed drastically and he quickly explained. I didn't. I just what? Yes, he had indeed listened to his wife's words, which was why he did not have a good impression of Chen Jingguan. And his wife had also listened to Madame Wu's words and made pillow talk. At the end of the day, the cause was indeed Madame Wu. Master Wen was furious. He suddenly looked at Madame Wu and said, Tell me, why are you so sure that he stole your things? Under everyone's gaze, Madame Wu knew that if she did not say anything, she would probably not be able to raise her head in the future. She secretly took a deep breath and suddenly raised her head. It was Chen Jingguan who stole it. Back then, only he ran into the room where the gift was placed. The thing was gone. If it wasn't him who took it. I'm an adult. I have no grudges with such a child. There's no reason to wrong him, right? No reason. Gu Yundong sneered. How can there be no reason? Is it not a reason that the Wu family and the Chen family to fall out? Is it not a reason that your son wants to take in a concubine, and the Chen family doesn't allow it, and comes to your house to settle scores? Your Wu family is in the wrong first. You don't dare to look for the adults, so you schemed against a child. How impressive! After Gu Yundong was done, she looked at Madam Sun. So she is your witness, right? This is truly an eye-opener. She made up stuff in front of you because of personal grudges, and you lambasted an innocent child based on that. In the end, your husband blamed everything on him and chased him out of school. Elementary scholar? Teacher? You're simply ruining the kids. Pooey, disgusting. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 755. Admitting mistake. Madame Sun's expression changed. She looked at Madame Wu, hoping that she would say more, but Madame Wu was simply making something out of nothing. Facing Gu Yundong's pressure, Madame Wu did not have any confidence. She could only grit her teeth and hold her hands tightly. However, her mind was blank and she could not find any words to refute. Master Wen almost fainted. He felt more and more people around him, and the way they looked at him was getting worse. Even the students who had run out to watch the show began to whisper. Gu Yundong looked at Master Wen. Say something. Where's the evidence? Did a dog eat your conscience when you were hurting a child like this? You don't pester me here. Because you can't reason with me. You say that I'm pestering you endlessly. Let everyone be the judge. Who's in the wrong in this matter? Who's pestering someone else endlessly and refusing to admit their mistake? Who's disregarding human lives and ruining a child's future? After Gu Yundong finished speaking, someone beside him immediately shouted, I say, Master Wen, you said that the child was a thief. Show me the evidence. That's right. What right do you have to say that the child's father can't give him 50 copper coins as a reward? I even gave my child a tael of silver as New Year's money. I think he just thinks that the child is easy to bully because he came from the countryside and doesn't have a backer. He might as well find a scapegoat. You think you can be a teacher and educate others? Fortunately, my child hasn't come here to study. These few days, I'm thinking of sending my child over to be enlightened. Forget it. Oh, go back and find another school. Fortunately, you didn't send your child over. Otherwise, if something was missing from the school, they might even chase your child out. There were more and more voices, and they were getting louder. At this moment, Master Wen wished he could find a hole to hide in. Madame Sun glared at Madame Wu fiercely, angry that she was actually using her. In the end, he had no choice. Seeing that the accusations around him were getting louder and louder, Master Wen was afraid that the entire town would be attracted over. He could only take a deep breath and say, This is indeed my mistake. I misjudged Qingyuan. After saying that, he looked at Qingyuan and said, The decision to expel you from the school is cancelled. You're still a student of Wenhuo Hall. Come back to class with me. Gu Yundong wanted to spit in his face. You want to let it go so easily after wronging someone? No way. She looked down at Niu Dan beside her. Are you going back to school? Gu Yundong did not want him to continue, but Niu Dan was not her biological younger brother after all. She could not decide for him on this matter. Unexpectedly, Niu Dan shook his head vigorously. I'm not going. I'm not going to this school to study anymore. Gu Yundong rubbed his head and smiled. She looked up. Did you hear that? When Master Wen heard this, he nodded regretfully. Since you've decided, I won't force you. I was your teacher, and I hope that your future will be bright. With that, he turned around and walked in impatiently. However, he had just taken a step when Shao Qingyuan suddenly reached out to stop him. Master Wen was stunned and suddenly looked up. What else do you want? Master Wen is really interesting. Since you admit that you wronged Qingyuan and cleared him of the crime of stealing something, shouldn't you return the 50 copper coins? Master Wen's body stiffened. He turned around abruptly. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 756. Return the money. Could it be that what Master Wen said just now was all fake? Your apology was not from the bottom of your heart. It was just a show for others? Master Wen denied it on the spot. Of course not. It's just that Qingyuan said that the 50 copper coins was his, and Lu Shaoquan also said that it was his. Both of them. In that case, call Lu Shaoquan out. Let's face each other on the spot. How about that? The onlookers expressed that they had not finished watching the commotion and listening to the gossip. Master Wen had to continue making a fool of himself, so they agreed. That's right. Let's confront each other on the spot, so that we don't malign the child. Call Lu Shaoquan out. Master Wen had no choice. Although he was unhappy, His reputation was more important. Therefore, he asked the students in the school to find Lu Shaoquan. Lu Shaoquan was about 10 years old and looked older than Niu Dan. He was still a little nervous when he came over. He did not know where to put his hands and feet. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and sized him up for a while. When he walked out of the door, she asked, "You said that the 50 copper coins is yours, right?" Lu Shaoquan quickly nodded. "It's mine." "In that case, is there any mark on the 50 copper coins?" "Mark?" Lu Shaoquan looked surprised and reached into his pocket. He really could not understand what mark there was on the money. He was still young and it was his first time doing such a thing. He could not take it anymore in the face of a wily old fox like Gu Yundong. He lowered his head and did not dare to look up. Gu Yundong continued, "You might not know, but Chen Jingwen's 50 copper coins were given to him by his father in front of me. Before giving it to him, his father happened to be writing and accidentally knocked over the ink, so the 50 copper coins were stained. I have ink on my 50 copper coins. They were stained when I was doing my writing this morning, so, he couldn't finish." In an instant he felt that his mouth was too fast, and that something was wrong. Gu Yundong smiled and asked Niu Dan, "Is there ink on your 50 copper coins?" Niu Dan shook his head. "No, there's no color on my copper coins. Oh, a few copper coins are stained with soil. I plan to wash them properly when I get back." Gu Yundong smiled and looked at Master One and the crowd. Did everyone hear that? Now let's see what the 50 copper coins look like, shall we? Lu Shaoquan was too young and flustered. The others were not stupid and could tell that something was wrong in an instant. Master Wen's face was even more ashen. He looked at Lu Shaoquan and shouted coldly, "Aren't you going to take out the 50 copper coins?" Lu Shaoquan was so frightened that he trembled and took out a string of copper coins. Master Wen looked carefully. There was no ink at all, and there was indeed soil on 2 copper coins. It was obvious who was telling the truth. His cold gaze landed on Lu Shaoquan. "Tell me, is this 50 copper coins yours?" Master Wen was usually very dignified. With this solemnness, the kid was immediately frightened to tears. "It's not mine. I accidentally saw Chen Jingwen counting copper coins in the corner. In a moment of greed, I deliberately said that it was mine. Boo-hoo, I was wrong, Master. Don't chase me away." Master Wen's expression was very ugly. Madam Sun, who was beside him, was speechless for a long time. Shao Qingyuan took the string of copper coins from Master Wen and handed it to Niu Dan. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 757. Brother Shao, thank you with the money back. Gu Yundong did not want to pester them anymore. She believed that the people's eyes were sharp and the news spread quickly. It wouldn't be long before everyone in this area knew what Master Wen had done today. For a person who valued his reputation more than anything else, it was enough for Master Wen to suffer for a long time. But before she left, Gu Yundong gave him a blow. To find the truth in such a small matter with such a simple question, even I can easily judge it. However, Master Wen made such a simple case so complicated. As expected of the knowledgeable elementary scholar, today, we have all learned something. Puffed. Someone couldn't help but laugh. Master Wen finally couldn't take it anymore. His footsteps began to become unstable, and his fingers trembled. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. Was he going to faint again? Was she going to add another feat to her glorious achievements? Unfortunately, Master Wen's resistance was relatively strong. In the end, with the help of the gatekeeper, he held his chest and panted as he entered. Madam Sun also hurriedly covered her face and followed in. The other students lowered their heads and looked at each other. In the end, they quickly turned around and left with faces full of shame. In an instant, only Lu Shaoquan and Madame Wu were left at the door. It was the gatekeeper who had returned and pulled the sobbing Lu Shaoquan in. Madame Wu stood alone at the door and was pointed at. Gu Yundong glanced at her. She would tell Chunliang everything about the Wu family. As for how they would deal with it, it was up to them. She looked at the aggrieved and resentful Niu Dan and smiled. "Let's go." Niu Dan wiped his face and smiled. He took the 50 copper coins and ran to the side to pick up his basket before following Gu Yundong to the carriage. When he got into the carriage and saw the kite and Bao inside, his eyes widened. Sister Yundong, did you buy these for Yunshu? Yundong saw that his eyes were filled with envy and desire. Thinking that he had suffered greatly today, she gave him one. This is for you. Niu Dan looked at her in surprise. You're really giving it to me? You don't like it? Yes, I like it. He hugged the kite, and his face returned to its usual cheerful expression. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. This child's recovery ability was quite strong. Niu Dan held the kite for a while before carefully putting it down. He then looked up at Gu Yundong and pursed his lips. After a while he said, Sister Yundong, thank you. You're welcome. Niu Dan lifted the curtain of the carriage again, and said to Shao Qingyuan, who was driving, Shao, brother Shao, thank you. I won't call you a wolf cub anymore. You're better than them. Shao Qingyuan was stunned for a moment. In the past he wouldn't have cared if Niu Dan thanked him or not. But now, he was still expressionless, but he nodded slightly. After some thought he replied, No need. It's what I should do. Gu Yundong, who was sitting in the carriage, was overjoyed. Then she felt a little sad. In the past, Shao Qingyuan had received malicious intent. Although he had slowly gotten better recently, there were not many people who sincerely respected him. Most of them were just afraid of him. However, she thought that things would definitely get better in the future. Wasn't Niu Dan an example now? At this moment, this little fellow looked at Shao Qingyuan with sparkling eyes filled with admiration. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 758. I should have listened to you long ago. The three of them quickly arrived at Yongfu village in a carriage. Gu Yundong asked them to send Niu Dan back to the Chen family first. When the carriage stopped at the entrance of the Chen family's house, Madame Zhou was returning with a vegetable basket. She was stunned when she suddenly saw Shao Qingyuan sitting on the shaft of the carriage. When the curtain of the carriage opened, Gu Yundong's smiling face was revealed. Madame Zhou immediately smiled and greeted, Yundong, why are you here? Come in quickly. Before she could finish speaking, Niu Dan crawled out. At this moment, Madame Zhou really froze. She rubbed her eyes in confusion. In the next moment, she suddenly slapped her leg. Io Niu Dan, why are you back? Shouldn't you be at school during this hour? When Niu Dan saw his family, the grievance from before surged up again. He immediately ran towards him with tears in his eyes. Grandma, I'm not going to school anymore. Madame Zhou had dropped the basket in her hand. She quickly hugged him and asked, What's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you crying? Who bullied you? Tell Grandma. Grandma will deal with him. As she spoke, she hurriedly shouted inside, Old Chen, come out quickly. Something happened. Before Gu Yundong could say anything, Madame Zhou already had such a huge reaction. If she said anything later, the woman would probably be even angrier. However, on second thought, it made sense. If her Yunshu was chased out of the school like a thief without distinguishing between right and wrong, she would have the urge to tear down that school. Chen Liang came out very quickly. He was a little more rational than Madame Zhou. Although he was also concerned about why Niu Dan had returned without a hitch, when he saw Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan, he invited them in first before asking about the situation. The group of people entered the central room. Madame Song, who was working at the back, also heard the sound and ran over. Gu Yundong tried her best to explain the matter in detail in a calm voice. Before she could finish speaking, she saw Madame Zhou and Madame Song begin to wipe their tears. Their hearts ached as they hugged Niu Dan. Even Chen Liang was so angry that his face turned green. His hands were clenched tightly, and he looked like he wanted to rush over and settle the score with that teacher. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, Madame Zhou gritted her teeth and said, I knew that the Wu family was not a good thing. Wu Chong is arrogant and the Wu couple is narrow-minded. It's fine if they fell out with our family, but they actually took revenge on a child. I'm so angry. I'm going to tear her apart. Madame Song hugged Niu Dan and nodded vigorously. I'll go too. Chen Liang took a deep breath. All right, we still have to consider this matter at length. Then he turned around and said to Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong, thank you so much for today. If not for you, our Niu Dan would have been ruined. Gu Yundong sighed. Uncle Chun, don't say that. We're from the same village, and Niu Dan calls me sister. What kind of person would I be if I just stood by and did nothing when something like this happened? After saying that, Gu Yundong suddenly felt that something was amiss. The seniority seemed to be messed up. However, after today's incident, I'm afraid Niu Dan won't be able to go to school. It's good that Uncle Chun doesn't blame me for blowing things up. Chun Liang waved his hand. It's fine if he doesn't go to that kind of school. When you told me that the teacher was too pedantic, I should have listened to you. He wouldn't have ended up like this. Gu Yundong did not say anything. Seeing that this family was filled with righteous indignation and wanted to discuss the follow-up matters, she bade farewell with Shao Qingyuan. When she returned to the Gu residence, it was already a little late. Seeing Father Tong at the door, Gu Yundong hurriedly asked, are my parents back from the prefectural city? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 759. Knowing that you are unlikable. When Father Tong saw them return, he was instantly happy. This young lady and her future husband had gone into the mountains together. Everyone was filled with worries, especially because they had agreed to only travel for 5 to 6 days. But they had not returned for more than 10 days. Wasn't he excited to see her now? Hence, he did not hear Gu Yundong's question. He hurriedly shouted into the courtyard, Eldest Mrs. back. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 figures rushed out one after another. It was Gu Yunshu and Bian Yuanji. The 2 children hugged her and almost cried. Big sister, you're finally back. You don't know how worried we were. Cousin, are you all right? The 2 of them were at home. At this moment, it was time for them to be given the clothes-making vacation. Qin Wen's school was on vacation, and so was Tianhai Academy. Only the 1mo hall that she saw today felt that there was no need to give the students the clothes-making vacation, which would waste their time. In any case, the students were from the nearby villages and towns. There was no need for them to go back and put on more clothes to ward off the cold. That was why Gu Yundong saw Niu Dan at the entrance of that school today. She rubbed the 2 children's heads and said, aren't I fine? Seeing that Yunshu snorted and her eyes were obviously filled with accusation, she quickly pointed in the direction of the carriage and said, I brought you a gift. Go take a look. The 2 of them were stunned. They did not care about being angry with her anymore and ran to the edge of the carriage. Shao Qingyuan carried them up. The 2 of them climbed in and saw the kites inside. The 2 children's eyes lit up. They sat cross-legged in the carriage and began to choose. There were originally 4 kites, but after giving one to Niu Dan, there were only 3 left. The patterns that Gu Yundong had chosen were all pretty. There was an eagle, a dragonfly, a butterfly, and an owl. Niu Dan took the dragonfly away. Yunshu and Yuanji felt that such a beautiful kite like the butterfly should be left for Kiki. Therefore, one of them chose the eagle and the other chose the owl. They were both flying birds and looked very good. After choosing the kite, the 2 children got off the carriage in satisfaction. Although Yunshu was happy, he remembered that his eldest sister had only returned after so many days, making him worried and afraid. He immediately turned his head arrogantly and snorted, Don't think that I won't be angry anymore. Oh, the little guy was pushing his luck. Then will you return it to me? That won't do. Big sister, you're too old to play with kites anymore. You'll have to give it to me later. At that time, you have to find an excuse. How troublesome. Forget it, I'll accept it. Gu Yundong was speechless. Who said that she did not like to play with kites? She was already too old? She was only coming of age next month. Why was she already old? This little brat would definitely not be able to find a wife in the future. No wonder he blamed his father for not choosing one for him when he was young. It turned out that he knew his limits and knew that he was not likable. Gu Yunshu happily went in with Bian Yuanji with the kite. Rascal. Gu Yundong scolded him with a smile. However, when she saw that only the two children had gone out to welcome her. It seemed that her parents had not returned. It was also strange. At this time, Tianhai Academy should already be on vacation. However, she heaved a sigh of relief and entered the Gu residence with Shao Qingyuan. However, just as she took a few steps in, a surprised voice suddenly came from behind. Miss, Master, Madam, and Second Miss are back. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 760. A man among women. Gu Yundong stumbled and almost fell forward. Fortunately, Shao Qingyuan was quick-witted and rushed forward to support her. Gu Yundong looked at him and said softly, "Should I say that we're lucky or unlucky?" It was also very coincidental that they had only returned a step earlier than her parents. Shao Qingyuan laughed. "Let's go and welcome your parents." Yeah. The two of them turned around. Yinshu and Yuanji, who had also heard the sound, rushed past them and ran to the door. When Gu Yundong walked out of the door, she happened to see Yinshu, Yunka, and Yuanji hugging each other tightly, as if this was the only way to express their affection for each other. The children were jumping around, clearly overjoyed. Even Madame Yang was envious, and went forward to hug them. Gu Yundong almost laughed out loud. She hurriedly shifted her gaze to her father. Unexpectedly, Gu Dajiang's face darkened as he looked at her unhappily. Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he knew that she had been in the mountains for so many days? No way, didn't father just come back? Gu Yundong coughed lightly and asked softly, "Father, why did you only come back today? You still have the cheek to say that?" Gu Dajiang was also very depressed. He snorted coldly. "Your milk tea shop opened yesterday, but a few days ago, Shuetao came to the Prefectural city and said that you had something on and couldn't come. Eldest Miss Nia asked me to represent you. Otherwise, I would have returned 2 days ago." Gu Dajiang was unhappy. Firstly, he couldn't come back earlier. He had gone back on his word to his wife and daughter, causing Madame Yang and Kiki to lose their spirits. Secondly, he was a man, and the milk tea shop was specially open to entertain female customers. Although some men came to celebrate the opening day, most of them gave gifts and left. He was the only one who stayed there from the beginning to the end. Those women whispered to each other about him in a strange manner. Gu Dajiang still felt uncomfortable when he thought of that scene. He was a man, and he didn't know where to look when he was in a place full of women. Fortunately, Madame Dai saw through his predicament and let him come back first. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. After listening to the entire process, Gu Yundong could only hold back her laughter and quickly apologized to him. "Father, you've worked hard. I know that you did something that you were unhappy about for me. You're the best father in the world." Humph. Although Gu Dajiang glared at her, he enjoyed what she said. He let Gu Yundong help him into the courtyard. After entering the courtyard and sitting down, Gu Yundong asked about the situation in the prefectural city. The milk tea was ready. Although Gu Yundong did not attend the opening ceremony, Madame Dai must have known that she had gone deep into the mountains. She had also told him about her family's matters, and briefly mentioned entering the deep mountains. Yinshu, who was at the side, glared at her while remaining silent. He did not say anything about his sister not returning home for more than 10 days. However, when Gu Yundong mentioned the matter of Neodan today, the little fellow finally could not take it anymore. He stood up and was about to run towards the Chun family. It was Gu Dajiang who quickly pulled her back. The Chun family must be discussing this matter now. Don't join in the mess. It's the same if you look for him tomorrow. Only then did Yinshu calm down, but he still clenched his small fists and looked angry. Gu Yundong thought of something else. Now that Neodan can't go to Wenhuo Hall to study, I don't know which school he will go to next. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 761. He can go to Dongyi Academy. It was not that Gu Yundong had not thought about Qingyuan. However, it was obvious that it wouldn't work. Not to mention how long Qingyuan would have to teach. He had more and more things to do now. He probably didn't have the energy to take in any more students. Ever since Yunshu and Yuanji entered the school, Qingyuan had never recruited anyone again, right? Moreover, although Gu Yundong felt that her relationship with Qingyuan was quite good, she could not rely on this relationship to unscrupulously stuff students into his school. She had already stuffed 2 of them in. Between the 2, Qingyuan had taken a fancy to Yunshi's talent, and Gu Yundong had exchanged for Yuanji with conditions. Not on Qin Wenheng's side. As for other places, there were only 2 schools in town, and one was Wenhuo Hall. He would definitely not go there again. The other school valued money too much and demanded high tuition fees. Gu Yundong did not like it. However, Chen Jingkai's son was studying there. This was because Chen Jingkai was a junior manager back then. In addition, his wife's family had some connections with the school, so he let his son study there. Later on, after Chen Jingkai lost his job as the town's junior manager, he had also thought of letting his son go to school after this year. However, now that he had become Gus' assistant, this thought was dispelled. Other than these 2 families, there were also a few small private schools. The teachers were not even elementary scholars. They could only teach the children to read. However, it was obvious that the Chen family sent their children to study and read because of the imperial examination. How could he be satisfied with just a few words? Forget it. These things were not something she could worry about. Chen Liang definitely knew what to do. Gu Yundong was just about to change the topic and talk to her family about other things when she heard Yunshu tilt her head and say, "Actually, he can go to Dongyi Academy." Gu Yundong was stunned. Dongyi Academy? I remember that the teacher of that academy brought his students to make things difficult for you, right? Yes. Yunshu nodded. But that teacher has been removed from the academy and won't be allowed to continue teaching. The dean of Dongyi Academy has also returned and even knows our teacher. He's a pretty good person. Yuanji also nodded at the side. The dean was very angry when he heard about what happened back then. Then he reorganized the academy. A few days ago, our teacher even brought us to Dongyi Academy to discuss knowledge with those students. After the new emperor ascended the throne, the dean of Dongyi Academy went to the capital for the examination. This trip lasted for more than half a year. Later on, he was waiting for the results in the capital. Unfortunately, he still failed in the end. Therefore, when he returned to Fengkai County, a long time had passed. From what Yunshu and the others said, Dongyi Academy was actually a good choice now. If there were no such annoying teachers, with Dongyi Academy's reputation in the county city, it was indeed a good choice. Well, in that case, she could give the village chief a suggestion. As for whether to accept it or not, it was up to them. With this thought in mind, Gu Yundong stopped talking about this matter. She wanted to ask about the milk tea shop, but seeing that it was getting late, and everyone had been on the road for the entire day, she let everyone go back to their rooms to rest early. The next morning, Yunshu and Yuanji hurriedly got up and brought Yunka, who was also awake, to look for Nyodan. However, when the 2 of them ran to Nyodan house, they saw that the door was tightly shut. There seemed to be no one in the Chen family. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 762. Seeking justice. Yunshu ran to her neighbor's house to ask around, and found out that the Chen family had gone to town. Chen Liang and Madame Zhou were not the only ones. Even Chen Jinbao went to the Gu residence early in the morning to apply for leave from Tongan. He followed his parents and went to seek justice for Nyodan angrily. Yunshu and the others could only run back. Gu Yundong was not surprised. The Chen family doted on their 2 grandsons very much. Even though Chen Liang, the village chief, maintained his dignity with a dark expression all day, how could he sit still after seeing his precious grandson suffer so much? Gu Yundong asked around and heard that it was not just the Chen family. Chen Liang also brought a few young men from the village with him. They looked like they were going to cause trouble. Gu Yundong was not worried, but Yunshu was a little disappointed. He did not see Nyodan, so he could not join him in the crusade against those bad guys. However, When he saw Yunka come out with his little butterfly kite, he instantly perked up again. Then he hurriedly ran back to his room and took out his owl kite. Let's compete and see whose kite flies the highest. How about that? Yunka ran over. It must be my butterfly. Then let's go to the barnyard. Yuanji was also excited. The three of them took the 3 kites and went out. It was autumn today and the wind was blowing. It was very suitable for kite flying. They ran out of the door in a hurry and went to the Zheng family's house, pulling Zheng Jia, Zheng Yu and Zheng Lu away. There were 6 people and 3 kites. 2 people and 1 kite. Back then, Gu Yundong had bought 4 because she wanted to give one to Lu Hongxiao. However, among the 4 members of the Lu family who had followed Gu Dajiang back yesterday, only Lu Hongxia was around. The others had all stayed in the courtyard and did not come back. The group of people ran to the barnyard, and the 3 kites instantly attracted their friends along the way. Therefore, when they arrived at their destination, almost all the children in the village followed them. Many people flew kites, but they couldn't eat or wear them. Their parents in the countryside didn't have the money to buy the kites, so they could only make the kites themselves. The homemade kites were simple and crude. There were a few thin bamboos and some window paper. It was squarish and did not even have a shape, let alone a color. It was so ugly that it made one want to cry. Therefore, the colorful kites that Yunshu and the others took out instantly became the children's favorite. They touched them with their hands. If Yunshu hadn't stopped them, the kites would have shattered into pieces before they could fly into the sky. Fortunately, although he was young, he was already a little dignified in the village. Everyone could only watch but not touch the kites. At most, they could only touch the kite strings. In the end, the kites were finally released into the sky. Looking at the butterfly, eagle, and owl that were getting higher and higher, the children below screamed excitedly. The rising and falling sounds attracted many adults to come out and watch. Actually, they wanted to fly the kites too. When Niu Dan returned, he saw such a lively scene when he passed by the barnyard. His eyes lit up. He quickly stopped the ox cart and ran home. He took out his kite and joined. After waiting for him to play happily for a while, Yunshu gave her kite to Zheng Lu and ran to his side to talk to him. Niu Dan, did you go and settle scores with that teacher from Wenhuo Hall today? That's right. Niu Dan was so excited that his face was red. Today his father, grandfather, and some uncles accompanied him. He actually made Master Wen apologize to him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 763. I can make the teacher faint. Yunshu sighed. You should have brought me along. Niu Dan was stunned for a moment. Someone beside him screamed for him to grab the string, or the kite would fall. Niu Dan simply handed the string to him, and walked to the side to chat with Yunshu. Why should I bring you along? You're small. What if you get bullied? Yunshu shook his head and looked very proud. I won't be bullied. I can make the teacher faint from anger. I'm especially experienced. Are you going there to make the teacher faint from anger? It's fine. Even if you didn't go, my father and the others almost made the teacher faint from anger today. Yunshu's interest was piqued. He pulled his wrist and sat down on a rock at the side. Then tell me, how did you make the teacher faint from anger? Niu Dan immediately twisted his body and started talking. At the same time, Chun Liang sat at the Gu residence and drank tea. He told them about his trip to town today. They went to Wenhuo Hall and met the teacher. Interestingly, Lu Xiaoquan's father also went to the school to settle scores with the teacher. Lu Xiaoquan's father was a butcher. He was originally filled with a ferocious aura, and his entire body was filled with muscles. It was said that yesterday, after Master Wen discovered that Lu Xiaoquan was a thief, he brought him back and taught him a lesson in front of all the students. He even made him kneel on the ground for an hour. In the end, he even chased him out of the school and refused to acknowledge him as a student. In the end, after Lu Xiaoquan returned, he said in front of his parents that there was no point in living, and that he wanted to hang himself. He only fell asleep after fussing over a whole night. Hence, Father Lu came over early in the morning. When Chun Liang said this, he was still a little angry. Fortunately, Dan met you yesterday, Yundong. Otherwise, he would have been chased out of the school after suffering injustice. The person who wanted to die would have been our Dan. Thinking of this, I feel a lingering fear. Gu Yundong drank her tea silently. No, Uncle Chun, you're thinking too much. I don't think Lu Shaoquan really wants to die. Otherwise, why would he cause such a ruckus in front of his parents? However, this was also because Lu Shaoquan was strong. If he were someone who was weak and could not stand being humiliated by Master One, he would probably really take things too hard. Actually, there could have been a very good solution to this matter. Stealing money was not right in the first place. After that, it was a huge mistake to frame others. Such a student should be severely punished. As a teacher, what he had to do was to find out the truth and clear Dajiang's name. Then he would guide and educate the perpetrator. However, Master Wen was not like this. His own reputation had been tainted, so he pushed all the responsibility to Lu Shaoquan. After deciding to chase him out of the school, he actually had to humiliate him in advance. This kind of person really disgusted her. Chun Liang also felt quite disgusted. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoquan's father was not someone to be trifled with. He had a bad temper to begin with, so when he went to school, he directly carried a butcher knife. As soon as the knife appeared, Master Wen's legs immediately went weak. He immediately apologized to Lu Shaoquan. When Chun Liang saw this, he immediately asked Chen Jinbao to bring the young men from the village to stand in front of him and start questioning him. Master Wen was so frightened that he almost fainted. He hurriedly apologized to Dan. Coincidentally, when he apologized, most of the students were watching outside. Seeing that the usually dignified and unsmiling teacher was actually so humble and spineless, they could not tell if they were disappointed or disgusted. In short, a few students whose families were relatively wealthy were already considering going to other schools. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 764. Completely disheartened after this incident, Master Wen's reputation was completely ruined. When the onlookers publicized what happened that day, many of the students' families were very dissatisfied. Gradually, the number of students in Wenhuo Hall decreased. In the end, there were only 5 or 6 left. Because of this, Master Wen blamed his wife, Madame Sunday. If not for her carelessness in making friends and interacting with such a selfish and mean person, he would not have become a knife in her hand to deal with Chen Jinguan like this. Not only did he lose face, but he could not even be a teacher. Madame Sun felt even more bitter in her heart. She hated Madame Wu so much that she gritted her teeth. She had said a lot of bad things about her outside, and it could be considered that she had completely fallen out with her. Chen Liang's family even got teacher Wen to refund Dan tuition fees before leaving the school with a cold snort. When Father Lu saw Dan, he wanted to settle scores with him. After all, Dan was one of the people who had caused his son to seek death. However, the Chen family had many people. Just standing there made people's hearts beat like drums. Hence, he could only forget about it and leave angrily with his son. After Chen Liang and the others came out of Wenhuo Hall, they went to the Wu family. They had not forgotten that the culprit was Madame Wu. However, the Wu family had guessed that they would come to them, so they didn't come. Chen Yulan was the only one left to deal with them. Chen Yulan was still speaking up for Madame Wu. She even hinted that Dan might really be dirty. Chen Liang had completely given up on her. In the past, he might have wanted to interact less with her, but now he had completely cut ties with her. Just take it that he had let his brother, Chen Tian, down. He would not acknowledge this niece. When Chen Liang told Gu Yundong about this, he was still a little dispirited. He couldn't figure out why things had turned out this way. Chen Yulan, who had married someone else, seemed to have become a completely different person. What could Gu Yundong say? It was not that she had become a different person, but that she had always been selfish. It was just that she could not pretend anymore, and was exposed. However, when she saw Chen Liang's dejected expression, she comforted him in the end. It's good to see it clearly as soon as possible, so that she won't bring even greater calamity to the Chen family in the future. Uncle Chen, don't be too sad. At least you've let Niu Dan off today. Chunliang nodded. Yes, seeing that teacher apologized to Niu Dan, I feel much better here. As he spoke, he began to hesitate, as if he had something to say and was embarrassed. Gu Yundong asked curiously, what's wrong? Is Uncle Chen in a difficult position? Yes, it's like this. Uncle Chen rubbed his hands and said, Niu Dan can't study at Wenhuo Hall in the future. I don't know where he should go in the future. Last time, you said that you knew all the schools in Fengkai County. Which school do you think is the best? Uncle Chen did not listen to Gu Yundong last time. Now he really regretted it. He was the village chief. In the past, he had thought that he was someone who had seen the world in this village. But now, compared to Gu Yundong, who had traveled everywhere and visited so many prefectures, he was just a country bumpkin. So he wanted to hear what she meant. Gu Yundong was about to talk him about this, but before she could say anything, Yunshu came in with Niu Dan and the others. When he heard this, Niu Dan immediately shouted with an intense reaction, I'm not going to study anymore. Everyone was stunned and turned to look at him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 765. Why don't you want to go? Uncle Chen was the first to react. He immediately scolded. What do you mean by not studying anymore? Don't spout nonsense. You know how many children in this village don't even have the chance to study. You can only sit there and study obediently because your parents are promising. But you actually don't cherish it. He was right. How difficult was studying these days? Although he was the village chief, it was also very difficult for him to provide for his two grandsons to study. However, he knew the benefits of knowledge. As long as his grandson could become an elementary scholar or high scholar, it could change their life. That was why he had shamelessly come to the Gu family today and carefully asked about the school. Chen Liang even had some hidden thoughts in his heart. He had seen Qin Wenjung before. Although he did not know his exact identity, he could tell from the man's aura that he was definitely not an ordinary person, especially since Yunshu and Yuanji were both studying at his place. They had been in school for less time than Niu Dan, but they had learned more than Niu Dan. It was said that they even had to learn how to ride horses and shoot arrows. That school was much more awesome than that Wenhuo Academy. Who wouldn't want to go to such a good school? However, he had also asked around. Teacher Qin had strict requirements for accepting students. It depended on talent and fate. Actually, he also knew that the hope was slim, but Qin Wenjung and Gu Yundong had a good relationship, so he still wanted to give it a try. Perhaps he would succeed? However, he did not expect his grandson to be unwilling to go to school. Previously, Chen Liang had fainted from anger. Now he had almost fainted from anger because of his grandson. However, Niu Dan's face was flushed red. His small hands were clenched tightly, and he looked very agitated and resistant. Chen Liang wanted to say something, but Gu Dajiang shook his head slightly and pulled Niu Dan over. He wasn't familiar with Niu Dan, but from what his son often said, he quite liked this enthusiastic and energetic little fellow. He asked gently in a low voice, Why don't you want to study anymore? It's not good to study at all. I'm unhappy and can't go home. The teacher doesn't let us play. Even if we have time to rest, we have to sit in our seats and read. We can't be in the toilet for the time of more than half a cup of tea. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I can't breathe. Niu Dan's expression became pained as he spoke. Gu Yundong understood that Niu Dan had developed a distaste for learning. Moreover, this phenomenon had not happened for a day or two. He must have felt suffocated under the pressure of the literary master. As expected, Master Wen was not suitable to be a master. However, Chen Liang was completely stunned and did not understand. Isn't this how studying is? Which student doesn't study hard day and night? The ancients even had their heads hanging from beams and their butts sitting on thorns. They wished they could sit in front of their desks 24 hours a day. Why do you feel uncomfortable? Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang looked at each other. This was a generation gap. Chen Liang had never studied before, so he couldn't empathize with his grandson, but Gu Dajiang knew. He gave Gu Yundong a look, and the latter left with Niu Dan, who was about to protest, and Yun Shu, who was frowning as if he was thinking about something. Only Gu Dajiang and Chun Liang were left in the central room. Chun Liang was still frowning. Gu Dajiang poured him a glass of water before saying slowly, "Village chief, I can understand your hopes for the child, but we have to understand that Niu Dan is only 8 years old this year. He's still young and doesn't have enough willpower to begin with. Let alone the child. Even I can't do it. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 766. Gu Dajiang's Persuasion. Chun Liang frowned even more. Gu Dajiang smiled and said, "It's like how you work hard in the fields all day for your family's food, clothes, and transportation. You work very hard and wish you could stay in the fields 24 hours a day. But is that possible? If you don't come back to rest when the weather is hot, you will suffer from heatstroke. If you work for too long, you will be tired. The hoe in your hand might even hit your toes, right? It's the same for reading. If a person doesn't rest and reads all day, his eyes won't be able to take it. His thoughts will be chaotic for a long time, and he won't be able to learn at all. The appropriate rest is for better work or learning in the future. Don't you think so? If you force students to read and write, it will backfire." With this explanation, Chun Liang felt much easier to understand. He looked at Gu Dajiang and asked in a low voice, "I heard that you're studying at Tianhai Academy now. Is it the same for your academy?" Of course, the Tianhai Academy is even more relaxed. The teacher will stop after teaching a certain amount of knowledge, leaving time for you to think and interpret. If you don't understand, you can ask the teacher. If you already understand, you can read books yourself, or practice calligraphy, or draw, play chess, or even go back to the dormitory to rest in advance. At their age, the most important thing was self-awareness. Oh my God, you can do that. This was the first time Chun Liang had heard of such a teaching method. In the past, he only knew that those students stayed at home every day and did not even go out. They only knew how to read books. Their family did not dare to speak loudly at home, and they read until midnight every day. In the end, he was still too ignorant. Gu Dajiang smiled. "Village chief, it's not only our Tianhai Academy. Yunshi's school is relatively relaxed. Why don't you ask him?" Chun Liang was stunned. In that case, does it mean that the teacher from Wenhuo Hall doesn't know how to teach? At least in some aspects, he really didn't do well. For example, Tianhai Academy has the clothes-making vacation, Yunshi's school has it, and even the private school in the neighboring village has it for half a month. However, the Wenhuo Hall in town only let the students stay in the school to study, obliterating the students' enthusiasm for studying. How can this be? Gu Dajiang wanted to say that this guy had caused a lot of harm. Chun Liang lowered his eyes and began to think. Compared to this kind of small academy, he naturally believed in the Tianhai Academy that had nurtured so many honorable scholars and top scholars, and had 100 years of history. Moreover, when he thought about it now, Niu Dan was very happy every day when he went to school at first. Every day he would come back and talk about the interesting things in the school, and how many words he had learned during the day. However, recently, he had become more and more silent. When he returned home, he refused to talk about the things in the school. Chun Liang sighed. After a while he asked, "Then is it true that Niu Dan is not allowed to go to school?" There's no need to make a decision so quickly. Niu Dan is now disgusted and repulsed by studying. He might feel that no matter which school it is, it will be the same as Wenhuo Hall. It will only give him huge pressure. If the village chief is free, you can actually bring Niu Dan to other schools to take a look, and let him know that there are still many schools with different teaching methods. Chun Liang nodded thoughtfully. Gu Dajiang knew that he needed to think about it, and talk to Niu Dan. The two of them stood up and walked out of the central room, planning to look for Niu Dan. Unexpectedly, after looking around the courtyard, they did not see the children. Chapter 767. Brother Shao, I want to carry your monkey. Not only were the children not around, But even Madame Yang and the others were gone. In the end, it was Father Tong who pointed them in the right direction and said that those people were watching the commotion in the Shao family. Gu Dajiang and Chunliang looked at each other before walking towards the Shao family. As soon as they passed the door, they heard familiar and tender voices. From time to time, there were claps and cheers. The two of them looked at each other and followed the sound to the backyard of the Shao family. Then they saw many people sitting in the backyard of the Shao family. Gu Yundong, Madame Yang, Yunshu, Yuanjinyo Dan, the three Zheng siblings, Mao, and even Tong Shuitao and Shuirong had come to join in the fun. Standing straight in the middle of the courtyard was Shao Qingyuan. He held a bow in his hand and drew an arrow from his quiver with his right hand. Then he raised it slightly and straightened the bow. The arrow was knocked to the bowstring and aimed at a target on the other side of the courtyard. The target was a little simple, but the stake was deeply embedded in the ground, waiting there. Shao Qingyuan stretched out his arm, drew the bow, and aimed. Then he loosened his fingertips slightly. The arrow swooshed and shot towards the center bullseye. Buzz! The tail of the arrow trembled slightly and let out a joyful cry. In the next moment, cheers instantly sounded in the courtyard. Brother Shao is awesome. Brother Shao is amazing. Brother Shao is the best. Brother Shao is invincible. Brother Shao, I want to carry your monkey. Everyone was speechless. They all looked at Gu Yundong. The latter explained calmly, what I mean is that with this skill, he can definitely beat a monkey. Really? Is that what you mean? We're inexperienced. Don't lie to us. The children were still puzzled, but Mao couldn't take it anymore. He shook his shoulders eagerly and ran to Shao Qingyuan's side in a hurry. Young master, let me try too. Shao Qingyuan nodded and made way for him. Mao rubbed his palms together and even spat twice in his palm. Then he took the bow from Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan suddenly raised his head and looked at him coldly. Mao. What's wrong? Young master, don't look at me like that. I'm scared and feel like I'm going to die. He didn't say anything just now. Mao asked carefully, young master, Shao Qingyuan raised his chin and said, use that. Yundong had given it to him. He was the only one who could use it. No one else could touch it. If they did, their hand would be cut off. Mao looked in the direction Shao Qingyuan was pointing and saw an old bow and arrow. It was the one that Shao Qingyuan often used when he went hunting in the mountains. Mao was crying in his heart. He wanted to touch the new bow. It looked very sturdy and powerful. However, young master did not allow it. He could only sigh secretly and silently walk to the side to pick up the old bow. However, after seeing the bow in Shao Qingyuan's hand, the one in front of him was really too simple. He heard that this bow was made by young master himself. Mao sighed in his heart. Forget it, this bow had an extraordinary meaning. He could not despise it. Hence, he took the bow and walked back to where Shao Qingyuan had been standing. He was about to retrieve the arrow. Unexpectedly, before he could touch it, the quiver was taken away. Mao was speechless. He looked up and saw Shao Qingyuan saying expressionlessly, didn't I tell you to use that? This guy was too stupid. He needed more training. Chapter 768. Hahahahaha. Everyone in the courtyard was confused. Only Gu Yundong pursed her lips and smiled. She looked at Shao Qingyuan with a gentle gaze. Mao could only take the other quiver in a daze. He looked at the bow in his hand with grief and indignation. It was precisely because he coveted the bow in young master's hand that he was so excited to be the first to shoot. Actually, his archery skills were not very good, however. In front of everyone, he could only take a deep breath, draw his bow, and aim. Swoosh. Pack. The courtyard was as quiet as could be. Everyone stared blankly at the arrow that had missed its target, and was speechless for a long time, until Gu Yunshu suddenly slapped his forehead with his small hand, turned his head and said, I can't bear to look. Shortly after, bursts of laughter rang out. Mao looked angrily at Agou and Azhu, who had made a sound, and glared at them fiercely. On the other hand, the children were very kind. None of them laughed at him. Instead, they comforted him seriously. It's all right. Brother Mao, you were just not ready. It's not that your archery skills aren't good. Niu Dan said sincerely. Brother Mao, you're already very good. I can't even pull the bowstring. The last time Master brought us to practice riding and archery, I could only stand at the side and watch, Yuanji advised. Brother Mao, although you didn't hit the target, you touched the bow and arrow. Zhenglu thought for a long time before saying. Mao's heart skipped a beat. Please stop talking. Fortunately, Yunke did not say a word. She even came over considerately and pulled his hand. Mao was instantly warmed up. As expected, the girl was a little cotton-padded jacket. However, in the next moment, the little girl said seriously, Brother Mao, you must be standing too far away. Let's get closer. Come, take a few steps forward and try again. As the young lady spoke, she pulled his hand and walked towards the target. Well, now for sure. Mao raised his head and looked at the target a meter away from him. His heart did not waver at all. He should have guessed. To hell with the little cotton-padded jacket. Pfft, ha. This time, Ago and Aju weren't the only ones laughing. Even the children couldn't help but slam the table and laugh out loud. Even Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan covered their mouths, their shoulders heaving and unable to stop. Gu Dajiang and Chen Liang looked up at the sky, but the corners of their lips kept curling up. Only Gu Yunke was at a loss. She ran to Gu Yundong's side and lay on his lap. She asked curiously, Elder sister, what are you laughing at? Isn't this a good idea? Yes, that's a good idea. Gu Yundong picked her up, her shoulders still trembling. The little girl saw that her elder sister was happy. Although she still did not understand why they were laughing, she also smiled foolishly. Now there was only Mao left standing alone in front of the target. His back view was especially miserable. He swore that from today onwards, he would train hard in archery. Fortunately, Ago and his brother learned from his lesson and stopped showing off. They really took a few steps forward and shortened the distance slightly. Although they didn't hit the bullseye like Shao Qingyuan, at least they didn't miss the target. In the end, they became more and more familiar, and their results gradually improved. The children also wanted to shoot arrows, but Shao Qingyuan's arrows were still too big and heavy for them. The others had never learned it before. Although Yunshu and Yuanji had taken riding and archery lessons with Qin Wenzheng, it was only limited to the most basic teaching. Moreover, the bows and arrows they used were different. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 769. Father is more like a teacher. The group of people finally calmed down and stopped fooling around when they saw that the sky was getting darker. When everyone turned around, they realized that Gu Dajiang and Chen Liang had been standing in the corner for a long time. When Gu Yundong saw Chen Liang, she still said, Uncle Chen, Niu Dan has developed a dislike of studying, so there's no hurry to go to school. We have to take it slow. I know. Chen Liang sighed. Your father and I talked a lot. I also know that I was too careless in the past and didn't realize that he was unhappy. I'm glad you understand. Chen Liang was very grateful to Gu Yundong and his father. When he saw that his grandson was still smiling happily, his heart ached. He held his hand and went home. The Gu family had also gone back. Shao Qingyuan wanted to follow them for a meal. Unfortunately, Gu Dajiang was back. He had to restrain himself. Gu Yundong walked to Gu Dajiang's side and whispered, Father, what did you say to Uncle Qin? He seemed to be thinking very seriously. Nothing much. Gu Dajiang thought for a moment. I just gave him an example. By the way, I think Niu Dan has a deep misunderstanding of school. It just so happens that Yunshu is on vacation at home during this period of time. Let him talk to Niu Dan. I know. Gu Yundong nodded. Father, I realized that you are more like a teacher than that teacher from Wenhuo Hall. As soon as she finished speaking, she was pulled into the room by Gu Yunke. On the other hand, Gu Dajiang suddenly stopped in his tracks. Teacher? Was he more like a teacher? In the following days, Yunshu indeed looked for Niu Dan to play with every day. When he was no longer so against school, Chen Liang brought him to the private school in the neighboring village. He even brought him to the county city's Dongyi Academy. However, the academy was on holiday now and there were not many students in the school. However, there were also some students and teachers who did not go home and continued to study in the academy. Originally, the academy did not allow visitors to enter, but Yunshu had been to Dongyi Academy twice and knew a few people inside. It was still easy for him to bring Nyodan in. This way, Nyodan finally slowly untied the knot in his heart and knew that he was narrow-minded. He began to slowly like the atmosphere of the school again, especially Dongyi Academy. He felt that he would be very happy to study here. The Chun family heaved a sigh of relief and began to prepare to bring Nyodan to Dongyi Academy to attend school after the clothes leave. At the same time, Yunshu didn't forget that Kiki's birthday was coming up. He entered the kitchen even more frequently. Gu Yundong thought that since she had given Yunshu a surprise last time, she would change her method this time. Hence, she hugged the little girl and asked her directly, "Kiki, it's almost your birthday. Have you thought of what you want? Tell me, it'll satisfy you." The little girl was stunned and her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yes, what do you want to eat and play?" The little girl hugged her neck, then looked up at the sky and said, "I want to become a fairy and run to the moon. I heard that there's goddess change on the moon. She has a little rabbit. I want to try goddess change's mooncake and see if it's delicious. I can bring it down for you to eat." Gu Yundong was speechless. She said with difficulty, "Anything else? This is too difficult." The little girl was a little disappointed, but after thinking about it, it made sense. She heard that to become a fairy, one had to go through many hardships. She was still too young, so the hardships were definitely not enough. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 770. Birthday wish. However, in the next moment, the little girl's eyes lit up again and she said, "I got it. Tell me. I want to grow up tomorrow. This way, I can make so many delicious foods that you can taste and praise me for." As she spoke, her face began to fill with yearning. The young lattice goal was already very clear. She liked to eat and cook. In the future, she would become as powerful as her sister and make many different things that she had never seen before to let everyone know how powerful she was. The little girl was thinking happily, but when she looked up, she realized that her eldest sister had a constipated expression. Even her parents and brothers, who were also listening attentively, were secretly covering their mouths and laughing. The young lady was instantly angry. She sat in Gu Yundong's arms and put her hands on her fat waist. "Don't laugh. I can make it. I can make delicious food and slap your faces." Gu Dajiang was overjoyed as he carried her over. All right. We won't laugh. Kiki will definitely make the best food in the future. But Kiki, if you want to become an adult tomorrow, we can't do anything about it. Think of other wishes that we can help you fulfill, okay?" Gu Dajiang was happy. In the past, when he was in the Gu family, be it Gu Yundong or Gu Yunshu, they were exceptionally sensible at a young age. Such naive words would never come out of their mouths. Even if they wanted to eat corn and sweet potatoes, they would only secretly think about it in their hearts. They watched eagerly and did not dare to bring it up. However, now that she had developed such a personality, it meant that his family's life was really good. They no longer had to be careful at such a young age and say whatever they wanted. Gu Dajiang felt bitter and complicated as he looked at his eldest daughter, who had changed everything. However, Gu Yundong had a conflicted expression. She was too naive. A child's dream could not be on the same level as an adult's. She should not have been too confident. After thinking for a while, she could only say to the little girl, "Why don't you tell me something I can do? You can tell me 3 wishes, 3. The little girl began to rack her brains. Something that big sister can do? But in her heart, big sister could do anything. Yunshu squatted beside Gu Dajiang and held her small hand as she said, "For example, you can eat a few more candies during your birthday. For example, if you want big sister to sing for you." Before he could finish speaking, he was hit on the head. He turned his head and looked at Gu Yundong sadly. The latter glared at him. "Sing my ass. You're the one who wants to hear it, aren't you?" Yuanji also suggested. Kiki, you can also get a new set of clothes. Gu Dajiang also said, or we can have a big meal. Madame Yang nodded crazily. This is good. Kiki, have a big meal. You like it? The little girl twisted her little head and turned around on everyone's face, as if she was thinking. After a long time, he finally nodded solemnly. I got it. Everyone looked at her expectantly. Firstly, I want to eat cake. As she spoke, she could not help but swallow her saliva. She had eaten it on second brother's birthday last time. It was delicious. After that, big sister stopped making it. She said that it was not easy to make and she did not have time. All right. Gu Yundong agreed and heaved a sigh of relief. At least she was not going to the sky or down the ground. When the time comes, not only will there be cake, but I will also make something else for you like your second brother. The little girl nodded vigorously. I also want to invite my friends. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 771. Family shopping. Gu Yundong rubbed her head and nodded. What about the second one? The second one? The little girl's round eyes looked around, and everyone looked puzzled. Soon she said, I want to visit the county city. Our family together. Gu Yundong was stunned. The family visiting the county? She looked at the young lattice expectant expression. Speaking of which, Kiki really didn't go shopping often. At most, she would sit in the carriage and lift the curtain to look outside. This was something that only happened when Gu Yundong was at home. If she was not at home, no one would dare to take her out on the streets. However, every time, she would look at the bustling streets outside in surprise. She might have gone on the streets twice after going to the Prefectural city, but she had never been with her family. Gu Yundong immediately agreed. All right, what about the third one? This time, the little girl was silent for a long time. She frowned and thought hard. She felt like smoke was coming out of her head, but she did not come up with anything. Finally, she shook her head. I haven't decided. All right, we'll talk about it after Kiki has thought it through. The little girl nodded vigorously and began to look forward to her birthday. When that day came, Gu Yundong indeed started preparing food early in the morning. Many children in the village came, and everyone had a happy day. The next day, Gu Yundong brought her entire family out to shop. The carriage stopped in the backyard of Gus, and the family walked to other places. Compared to the prefectural city, Fengkai County was much smaller. However, if they really wanted to shop, they wouldn't be able to finish shopping for an entire day. Gu Yundong thought that Kiki liked to eat, so she brought her to the street that specialized in food. Along the way, they bought a lot of pastries and snacks, and all kinds of buns and pancakes filled her bag. After walking for half a circle, Gu Yundong felt that this wish was not easy to fulfill at all. It was too tiring. When she finally saw Jinxiu restaurant in front, she quickly suggested, It's getting late. Let's go to the restaurant for lunch. Okay. 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 Other than Kiki and Madame Yang, all the three men nodded impatiently. Kiki found it strange. Why did they have to go to the restaurant to eat? They had clearly eaten a lot along the way. Could it be that they were hungry so quickly? She was not hungry at all. She was so good. Madame Yang didn't feel hungry either. She was in a good mood and was carrying a pot of flowers. However, since the others had agreed, they would let them be. The group of people walked into Jinxiu restaurant and asked for a private room from the shopkeeper. Then they went in and slumped on the chair, not wanting to move. Gu Yundong ordered a few dishes and let everyone eat slowly. Anyway, she knew that they could not eat much now. The most important thing was to rest. Perhaps it was because she had drunk too much water, but not long after, Kiki whispered into her ear that she wanted to go to the toilet. Gu Yundong brought her out. The outhouse was in the backyard. The two of them slowly went downstairs. It was almost time to eat, and the waiter began to get busy. After a while, when they returned, more than half of the people in the hall were already seated. Gu Yundong carried Kiki upstairs. Just as she was about to enter the private room, she saw someone walking towards another private room with a dark expression. This person glanced in her direction. Perhaps because she was carrying Kiki in her arms and blocking most of her face, he didn't recognize her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 772. A different room, but Yundong recognized him. Tao Xing, the second young master of the Tao family, the wastrel who had lost many shops to Lu Wei. He was not the only one who came. There were two other people walking behind him. One was a young man, and the other was a middle-aged man. The three of them entered the private room together, but Tao Xing's expression was very ugly. Yundong paused. In the past, she would not have looked at Tao Xing. After all, the man had nothing to do with her. Although Tao Xing had suffered at her hands, the Tao family did not cause trouble for her. However, when she thought of how Shao Qingyuan's background was related to the Tao family, she couldn't help but pay more attention to the Tao family. Big sister. The young lady in her arms looked at Yundong, who was standing at the door and hesitating to enter. She tilted her head. Yundong came back to her senses and smiled at the young lady. Then he pushed open the door of the private room and carried her in. He said to Dajiang, "Father, I'll go out for a while. You guys rest first." Dajiang nodded and didn't ask further. He knew that his daughter was busy. Yundong went out again and looked at the private room that Tao Xing had entered. This was the Jinxiu restaurant. Due to her relationship with the Lu family, she was very familiar with this restaurant. Tao Xing's private room. She remembered that when Lu Wei brought her to the restaurant earlier, he had mentioned that this restaurant originally did not belong to the Lu family. It was bought by the Lu family from other merchants. The original owner did not know how to do business. This restaurant kept incurring losses and could not be saved at all. Later, when the Lu family took over, it was not ideal at first. Some people said that the Lu family would probably follow in their footsteps. In the end, old Master Lu secretly found a feng shui master to help him calculate. The master said that there was a problem with the feng shui. The big private room at the corner was leaking money. It was best to split it into two, but it could not be completely separated. Hence, old Master Lu divided that private room into two rooms. According to the feng shui master, the wooden planks separating the rooms were very thin. Therefore, although these two private rooms looked like two, in fact they could hear each other's words clearly. Other than the few people from the Lu family and the manager of the restaurant, no one else knew about this. However, old Master Lu was a strict businessman. The two private rooms had always been used as one private room. As long as one private room had a guest, the other private room would not receive guests. As for why Lu Wei told her, it was because there was a time when she wanted to sit in that corner private room, but Lu Wei didn't let her. He had a strange expression on his face. One moment, he said that there were guests in that private room, and the next moment he said that there weren't. He contradicted himself and gave himself away, and then she tricked him. Coincidentally, Tao Xing entered the room today. Yundong smiled and walked to the door of the private room. She looked around and did not see the waiter and shopkeeper. He quietly pushed the door open and walked in. Then he locked the door from the inside. Then, she tiptoed to the wooden wall separating the private room, and pressed her ear against it. In the end, there was still a layer between them. The voice on the other end was a little blurry. After a while, Tao Xing and the other two seemed to hear the waiter bringing the dishes over. Except for the waiter reporting the dishes, they didn't say anything. It was not until the waiter finished serving the dishes and left after saying, "Please enjoy your meal, sir." When the door of the private room was closed, one of the voices could be heard. "Second young master, don't be too angry. There's always a solution." The voice sounded a little low. It should be the middle-aged man speaking. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 773. Shocking news then, Tao Xing said angrily. How can I not be angry? My brother is deliberately trying to kill me. He dug out all my secrets and placed them in front of my father and grandmother. I really want to kill him. The middle-aged man comforted him. No matter how much eldest young master does, it's useless. In old master and old madam's hearts, second young master is still more important. That's right. Eldest young master made so many preparations this time. The evidence was right in front of old master and old madam. Didn't old master just reprimand you a little? Eldest young master did nothing. The young man also said. Tao Feng, the eldest young master of the Tao family, was completely disregarded in his words. There was only disdain. But Tao Xing slammed the table, scaring Gu Yundong so much that she almost knocked her head on the wooden wall. Reprimand? My father took back all the things I'm doing. I don't have any power now. How can this be called useless? Second young master, there's no need to be anxious. Old master is just doing it for eldest young master to see. In at most 3 months, second young master will be able to regain control. The middle-aged man said. Tao Xing sneered. 3 months is long enough. When I take over, who knows what my brother will do? I really regret not finding more people to snatch those jars of wine. Gu Yundong's expression changed. Snatch. Were those men in black sent by Tao Xing? Was the man they met in Anbei town colluding with Tao Xing? Damn it. It turned out that not only did this scourge want to rob them, but he also wanted to kill them. Gu Yundong tugged her fingers slightly and suppressed her anger. She continued to listen. The middle-aged man's voice continued. Eldest young master is scheming. It's useless even if we find a few more people. Who would have thought that the escort was just a bait and there were no wine jars in the carriage at all? I wonder who eldest young master found to transport those jars of wine, and the things under the jars. Was there something under the wine jars back then? Gu Yundong frowned. Back then, they had indeed opened the wine jar, but the color of the wine in the jar was a little dark. She did not know if there was anything under it, so she was really not sure. It seemed like he had used the escort agency to secretly transport something that was worth more than the 4 jars of wine. Tao Xing snorted coldly. No matter how scheming he is, he wouldn't have guessed that my father had placed something in the wine jars. Why would he specially change the team just for those 4 jars of wine? I think those people didn't put in enough effort. They ran away because they couldn't beat a few escorts, and even found an excuse. I shouldn't have hired them back then. I could have found a few robbers who were better than them. At this point, it's useless to say all this. The eldest young master has completed that task. The 4 jars of wine have been sent to the Qingyuan Prefecture. If we want to frame the eldest young master, we have to find another way. Tao Xing was very frustrated. What other way can I find? I have nothing to do now. I don't have the power to do anything. You can't say that. The young man suddenly laughed and said mysteriously. Second young master, I've recently heard of something. It's just nice that you can take advantage of the fact that you have nothing to do in the next 3 months to investigate properly. Perhaps you can completely overthrow eldest young master, and make him have no chance to make a comeback. Tao Xing and the middle-aged man looked at each other with interest. What is it? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 774. Tao Feng is looking for Shao Qingyuan reading Omicron and Novel Cool. Omicron Lease, I heard that eldest young master is looking for third young master. Tao Xing and the middle-aged man were surprised. Even Gu Yundong was shocked. Tao Feng was looking for third young master, or Shao Qingyuan? That's impossible. Tao Xing was the first to deny it. He has the guts to look for that jinx. No one in the entire Tao family dares to mention this. If he finds the guy, grandmother will chase him out of the family without us. Therefore, eldest young master's actions were very secretive. The young man said with a smile. Actually, eldest young master hasn't started looking for him recently. He already started searching for him half a year ago, but the commotion was too small, so no one knew about it. That's why I heard about it recently. Tao Xing was excited when he heard that. All right, I haven't done anything, but he's already courting death. Just let him go and look for him. I'll see what he can do when he finds him. Gu Yundong did not look good. Tao Feng was looking for Shao Qingyuan. Tao Xing would definitely keep an eye on him. By then, the Tao family would know. Shao Qingyuan's troubles would follow. At that moment, Gu Yundong really wanted to rush over and beat Tao Xing to death. After that, Tao Xing and the others talked about something. Gu Yundong started to listen intermittently. It seemed that they had found Tao Feng's weakness. Tao Xing's mood finally improved, and he no longer cared about his power. She slowly sat on the stool and continued to listen to the conversation in the private room while thinking about why Tao Feng was looking for Shao Qingyuan. Tao Feng should have known about this younger brother long ago. Then, what was his attitude towards this younger brother? Was it because they were from the same mother? And as the eldest brother, he wanted to regain the kinship and responsibility for his younger brother? Or was it that he, like the rest of the Tao family, also felt that his third brother was a jinx who caused his mother to die and his status in the Tao family to not be high? Or maybe, he was fighting alone and needed an ally? Gu Yundong thought for a long time, but she could not tell what Tao Feng was thinking. The only thing she was sure of was that it would be troublesome. If he started looking for Shao Qingyuan, it would definitely be very troublesome. Gu Yundong pursed her lips. She had to discuss this with Shao Qingyuan as soon as possible. Not long after Tao Xing and the other two finished eating, they left. Gu Yundong then got up, rubbed her stiff limbs, and walked out of the private room. The waiter from Jinxiu restaurant happened to go upstairs to clean up the plates. When he saw her coming out from next door, his expression changed. Why was Lady Gu here? The waiter did not dare to ask and hurriedly explained the situation to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper knew that Miss Gu had a good relationship with his young master, and also knew about the grudge between her and the Tao family. After hearing this, he more or less guessed something. He asked the waiter to keep it quiet, and only found an opportunity to tell Old Master Lu. When Old Master Lu heard this, he knew that the Gu girl must have known about the problem with the private room. He did not say anything and pretended that he did not know. He asked the shopkeeper and the waiter to shut up and pretend not to see it. Meanwhile, Gu Yundong had already returned to her private room. The Gu family had been waiting for a long time. Kiki even sat in Gu Dajiang's arms and nodded her head as if she was about to fall asleep. Gu Dajiang said, "We've been shopping for half a day. I think everyone is tired. It's not early either. Let's go home first." The girl in his arms nodded. "Let's go home." After all, she was still young. Although she was still in high spirits previously, after eating and drinking her fill and resting in such a quiet place for so long, she immediately felt tired. Chapter 775. What do you think? Reading Omicronim novel cool. Omicronim, Lis Gu Yundong nodded. All right, let's go home. The group left the private room and quickly returned to Yongfu village in a carriage. She was a little distracted along the way. Gu Dajiang could tell that she must have encountered something when she went out. He wanted to ask, but the carriage was filled with children. He had to wait until they reached home. When they arrived at the Gu residence, Gu Dajiang carried the sleeping girl down. Yunshu and Yuanji, who were also taking an afternoon nap in the carriage, couldn't help but rub their eyes when they heard the sound. They woke up and went down in a daze. Without waiting for the carriage to be pulled in, Gu Yundong hurriedly said, "I have something to discuss with Brother Shao." Gu Dajiang, who was about to ask, was speechless. All right, it seemed that her absent-mindedness had something to do with Shao Qingyuan. When Gu Yundong entered the Shao residence, she realized that Shao Qingyuan was not at home. After asking Mao, he found out that Shao Qingyuan had heard that a doctor with good medical skills and morals had been chased out of a medical center. He was busy looking for that doctor. When the time came to open a pharmacy, he would be hire the doctor. The pharmacy Shao Qingyuan bought in the Prefectural city was relatively large and had a good location. He originally wanted to rent it out and open the pharmacy in a year or two. However, Gu Yundong's footsteps were too fast, so he could not slack off. Coupled with the appearance of a suitable doctor, he had already collected a lot of herbs. He could prepare the pharmacy in the prefecture capital. Gu Yundong frowned slightly and wanted to look for him. However, even Mao did not know where the doctor's house was, so she could only wait at the Shao family's house. She waited until night fell. When Shao Qingyuan entered, his face was filled with joy. It was obvious that things had gone smoothly. Unexpectedly, Mao told him that Gu Yundong had been waiting for him all afternoon. Shao Qingyuan immediately quickened his pace and hurried through the door. Yundong, what's wrong? Did something happen? Gu Yundong hurriedly went out to welcome him. She nodded when she heard this, and a rare serious expression appeared on her face. Shao Qingyuan pulled her back to her seat. Come, sit down and talk slowly. Did you encounter some trouble? I'm not the one in trouble. You are. Shao Qingyuan was stunned for a moment before he heaved a sigh of relief. Then he smiled and said, It's fine. If there's trouble, let's resolve it. There's nothing to be afraid of. Gu Yundong glared at him. Don't take it lightly. The trouble I'm talking about is about the Tao family. There was no one in the central room, but Mao and the others were in the courtyard. Gu Yundong still pulled him into the room and told him what she had overheard when she met Tao Xing today. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but frown. What do you think? Gu Yundong asked. Shao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said, Since Tao Xing colluded with that robber, it seems that he knows that robber. Last time, Dai specially went to keep an eye on that person. There should be a result. He might know who that robber is. Moreover, that robber can make Dai Wenhuo rush back in advance. I'm afraid there's something wrong with his identity. Coincidentally, since Tao Xing knows him, he might be able to start with Tao Xing. I think we can just tell Qin Wenjing about this. He definitely knows what to do. We don't have to care about anything else. Gu Yundong was speechless. She was furious. Who's talking to you about the robbers? Did this person hear the main point? She pinched him angrily. I'm talking about Tao Feng looking for you. Chapter 776. 2 Inhumane reading Omicron and Novel Cool. Omicronym, Li's Tao Feng was looking for Shao Qingyuan. This was what she wanted to say. Shao Qingyuan was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, Just let them keep looking. It's fine. How can it be fine? What if they find you? So what if they find me? Can the Tao family take my life? Their goal is to suppress me and not let me stand out. Only then can they ensure that the Tao family will be rich for a long time. But now that I'm already grown, who else can they find to suppress me? Besides, didn't you just say that Tao Xing is colluding with that robber? If Qin Wenjing finds out, he definitely won't let them off. What am I afraid of? Gu Yundong saw that he really did not care about the Tao family, and did not care if they would come looking for him. Indeed, according to the Tao family's intentions, they wouldn't take Shao Qingyuan's life, but Gu Yundong glared at him. Why don't you understand? If Tao Feng finds you, everyone will know that you're a member of the Tao family. Tao Xing colluded with the robbers and might have done something treasonous. If the entire Tao family is involved, you won't be able to escape if the Tao family is convicted. These days were different from the modern world. There was no such thing as taking responsibility for one's own actions. If one person committed a crime, the entire family would be implicated. If Shao Qingyuan had nothing to do with the Tao family, she would have directly reported the matter to Qin Wenjing in the county city. Why would she care about the Tao family's life? But not now. If something happened to the Tao family, Shao Qingyuan might be implicated. Especially when Tao Feng was still looking for him. Who knew how many clues he had? Gu Yundong lowered her head and frowned. After a while, she said, No, we can't tell Qin Wenjing about Tao Xing's relationship with the robber for the time being. At the very least, I have to ensure your safety first. But what should I do? Gu Yundong began to ponder. Her expression was exceptionally solemn. If someone in a family commits a crime, others in the family will suffer too. This law is too inhumane. Now we don't know how far Tao Xing has crossed the line. Will he suffer alone or will everyone die with him? We can only prepare for the worst and think of a way to get you out of this. She rubbed her chin and looked out of the window. A moment later, she frowned again. Unless you make a great contribution, and can make the emperor exempt you. Great contribution, great contribution. If I had known earlier, I would have reported this method of refining white sugar in your name. This kind of contribution to improving the livelihood of the people, coupled with your incompatible relationship with the Tao family, and the fact that the emperor is a reasonable person, he definitely won't punish you. However, she could not do it now. She had already reported it to the emperor. If she changed it now, it would be a crime of deceiving the emperor. Not only would it not help Shao Qingyuan, it might even add fuel to the fire. What else could she do? What did the emperor care about the most? People's livelihood, military affairs, culture. On the military side, she could create explosives. Explosives were no longer restricted in the apocalypse. There were so many zombies, and there were not enough guns and bullets. Many people would create explosives themselves to save their lives. At that time, whoever mastered one more ability would be able to live for a few more days. Yundong did not know how to do it at first, but when she went out with a small team one time to search for supplies, she had seen someone do it. Its power was average and did not have the aura of sweeping through 1,000 troops that she had imagined, but it was not a problem to blow up a couple of zombies. Chapter 777. Yundong and Qingyuan are in the room reading Omicron Novel Cool. Omicron Lisku Yundong tried to make it once. There were several packets of it in her space. But no, this thing was too powerful. In the era of cold weapons, the hot weapon would be convenient for the militants. If this thing was taken out, the impact would be earth-shattering. She could not do it. Moreover, with their current situation, they might even have problems protecting themselves. Yundong dismissed this idea in her mind. If the military could not be touched, then there was only livelihood and culture. This range was huge. She had to think about it carefully. What should she do? Yundong's brows were tightly knitted, and his mind was almost in a knot. Suddenly, a heat source came from behind, and then her entire body was pulled into Shao Qingyuan's arms. Shao Qingyuan hugged her tightly. It was as if she was his entire life. There was a smile on his face, and his heart ached. He was surrounded by an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. He couldn't help but lower his voice. There's no need to think so much. Yundong turned her head slightly. How can I not think so much? I don't even know what Tao Feng found. Yundong's eyes widened when her mouth was suddenly blocked. Did he kiss her? Shao Qingyuan left as soon as he kissed her. His lips still had her soft touch, making him feel a little reluctant. Seeing her stunned expression, Shao Qingyuan's eyes darkened. He quickly shifted his gaze and looked out of the window, but he still hugged her tightly. Just tell Qin Wenjing the entire matter. We don't know how serious the Tao family's crime is, but Qin Wenjing definitely knows. Once he knows, he will know what to do. Shao Qingyuan felt that directly handing over the troublesome matter to Qin Wenjing was the best solution. Besides, they could be considered to have contributed by reporting Tao Xing, right? Back then, they had brought Wenhuo into the mountains and exposed the robbers' true colors. They had already contributed. Yundong finally came back to her senses. She subconsciously pursed her lips and wondered why he left after kissing her. She had yet to react. However, after hearing Shao Qingyuan's words, she was still stunned for a moment. She asked him in surprise, "Are you planning to tell him your background?" "There's nothing to hide. I don't care anymore." In the past, he had kept it a secret because he was afraid that Yundong would also treat him as a jinx and avoid him. But now it didn't matter. As long as she stood by his side, the opinions of others didn't matter. Yundong was stunned for a long time before saying in a low voice, "Then shall we look for Qin Wenjing tomorrow?" "Yes, let's go together." Shao Qingyuan tightened his arms slightly and said in a low voice, "Don't think too much. Someone will take care of it for us." He was not embarrassed to trouble Qin Wenjing at all. After all, the man was a young top scholar and a genius. There was no problem. Yundong inexplicably sympathized with Qin Wenjing. She smiled and placed her hand on his arm around her waist, gently twisting it. Shao Qingyuan's body stiffened slightly, and he couldn't help but lower his head again. At this moment, Gu Dajiang's voice came from outside the door. Yundong, are you here? The two people who were hugging each other suddenly separated. Gu Yundong subconsciously started to tidy up her clothes and hairstyle. By the time she saw that there was nothing unusual, Gu Dajiang was already standing outside the door. His voice was filled with anger as he asked Mao, "You said that the two of them are in the room?" Chapter 778. Her daughter took the initiative to enjoy reading. Mao wanted to beat himself to death. In a moment of carelessness, he said something he shouldn't have. He quickly added, "Miss seems to have something very important to tell young master." So important that they had to enter the room? Shao Qingyuan. Before Gu Dajiang could finish speaking, the door in front of him was suddenly pulled open. Gu Yundong stood in front of him with a smile. Gu Dajiang choked and quickly sized up the two of them. Then he looked at Shao Qingyuan warily. It seemed that there was nothing unusual. However, his expression was still very ugly. He asked, "What were you talking about?" Gu Yundong whispered into Gu Dajiang's ear, "It's not good for others to know about Brother Shao's background. I was anxious, so I pulled him into the room." Gu Dajiang knew about Shao Qingyuan's background. No wonder his daughter's expression was so ugly on the way home. Moreover, it was actually his daughter who took the initiative to pull the guy back to his room? Gu Dajiang couldn't say anything else. His tone softened a little as he asked, "Are you done?" "Yes, we're done." "Have you found a solution?" Judging from her previous frown, she must have encountered a problem. However, now that her expression had improved, it should have been resolved. Gu Yundong nodded. "Yes. We plan to talk to Master Qin tomorrow." Gu Dajiang coughed lightly. "All right, since there's nothing else, go home with me. It's already so late, but you don't feel hungry. Let's go home for dinner." "Oh." Gu Yundong acknowledged him and followed him out of the door. When she stepped out of the door, she turned around and winked back. The corners of Shao Qingyuan's lips curled up. He only turned around when she walked out of the courtyard. Unexpectedly, when he turned around, he saw Mao looking at him with a gossipy expression, as if he was also curious about what the two of them had done in the room. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him warningly and returned to his room. Although Shao Qingyuan had said that he would tell Qin Wenjing about this first, Gu Yundong felt that to be safe, she had to prepare a backup plan. Even if she could not use it this time, she might use it in the future. So the people's livelihood or culture. She couldn't figure it out the entire night. The next morning, she went to the county city with Shao Qingyuan to look for Qin Wenjing. Perhaps because the school had been on leave recently, Qin Wenjing was a little free. Therefore, when they arrived, this guy was painting. Gu Yundong took a few more glances and thought to herself that a genius was indeed a genius. It had only been a short while, but he had already mastered the drawing method and key points that she had told him. Now his strokes were smooth and exceptionally smooth. Qin Wenjing put down his pen and slowly put away the painting carefully. Then he carefully wiped his hands and took a sip of tea before looking at the two of them. "You don't visit unless you need something. You two busy people are here. Looks like nothing good is going to happen." Why was this person's words so annoying? Gu Yundong pursed her lips. Seeing that he was not pouring tea for them, she poured 2 cups. She was not polite at all. The corners of Qin Wenjing's mouth twitched. "Tell me, I'm listening." "We are indeed here for something," Gu Yundong said. "I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" Qin Wenjing. She actually had good news for him? "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 779. Good news and bad news. To enjoy reading good news, bad news. Qin Wenjing lowered his eyes and thought for a while before saying, "Tell me the bad news first." This way, he would be pleasantly surprised to hear the good news. Gu Yundong nodded. "All right, I'll tell you the good news first." "Are you freaking kidding me?" Qin Wenjing couldn't help but want to curse. "Were you asking for fun?" Not wanting to speak, he snorted and slumped in his chair with a look that said, Hurry up and say it. Gu Yundong said. Wenhuo followed us into the deep mountains last time. When we came out, we saw a robber. You should know about that, right? I know. Qin Wenjun glanced at them from the corner of his eye. Indeed, the two of them knew very well in their hearts. It was just that they didn't reveal it. Gu Yundong nodded. Then, the good news is that we have another clue about the robber. Qin Wenjun was stunned and suddenly sat up straight. What clue? That robber was actually instructed by someone to rob the Tao family of the 4 jars of wine. The person who instructed him was the second young master of the Tao family, Tao Xing. Qin Wenjun was stunned. You're saying that the second young master of the Tao family got someone to snatch the wine that his family wanted to transport? Gu Yundong nodded and explained the complicated relationship. Qin Wenjun understood that Tao Xing wanted to deal with Tao Feng, so he colluded with the robbers to do this. The robber knew Tao Xing, the Tao family. Qin Wenjun stroked his chin thoughtfully. It seemed that he should start investigating the Tao family. As Qin Wenjun thought about this, he stood up from his chair and looked like he was about to go out to find someone to do something. He had just taken a step when Gu Yundong pulled him back, and he sat back in his chair. He looked up in surprise. What are you doing? What do you think? Gu Yundong gritted her teeth. Since I've said the good news, of course I have to say the bad news. Oh right. I almost forgot about that. Qin Wenjun expressed that he did not want to hear it at all. Could he reject it? But looking at Gu Yundong's round eyes, he could only give up and say resignedly, all right, go ahead. It's still about the Tao family. We need your help. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and moved aside. This was Shao Qingyuan's background. It was better for him to say it himself. Meeting Qin Wenheng's suspicious gaze, Shao Qingyuan told him how he had been adopted by old Master Li and how he had learned the truth. Then he told him the results of his own investigation. Qin Wenjun was dumbfounded. He was considered a knowledgeable person. He had never heard of one's biological father and grandmother degrading one like this. Killing was quick and painless, but these two people wanted a servant to torture their descendant until his body and mind were damaged. Living was more miserable than death. Just because of what a fortune teller said? Qin Wenjun was furious when he heard this. Although Shao Qingyuan had described his experiences since he was young casually, he knew that it would not be easy. He frowned tightly and thought for a moment before saying, I understand. I'll consider this matter carefully. Gu Yundong asked him. Since Tao Xing is colluding with that robber, can we arrest him now before they find out Brother Shao's identity? Qin Wenjun couldn't help but glare at her. What lousy idea did you come up with? If we arrest Tao Xing now, we'll alert the enemy. We can only investigate how deeply Tao Xing and the robber are related first. Is it just hiring someone with money? Or, are they very close? However, if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 780. Gu Yundong looks at him like he was a fool to enjoy reading. A glint flashed across Qin Wenheng's eyes, as if he was about to come up with a bad idea. Gu Yundong's interest was piqued. But what? You can cause some trouble for the Tao family, Qin Wenjun said with a smile. Find more things for the Tao family, especially Tao Feng. Divert his attention and make him lose the energy to search for the third young master of the Tao family. Then, Shao Qingyuan's identity won't be exposed. It would also buy him time to secretly investigate the Tao family. We'll tell you how to deal with the Tao family after we've investigated. If Tao Xing's matter is too big and you can't escape, then think of a way to make a contribution. If you're not involved, your identity won't be able to harm you even if it's exposed. However, according to Qin Wenheng's thoughts, Shao Qingyuan had provided clues time and time again, and he had already included him in the credit book. It did not matter much. Shao Qingyuan knew what was going on. What trouble are you referring to? Haha. Qin Wenjun laughed. That's your problem. In any case, both of you are quite smart. I believe it won't be difficult for you to come up with an idea to trip the Tao family up. He looked like he was just going to provide an idea and leave the rest to them. Gu Yundong snorted and looked at him as if she was looking at a fool. Don't think that she couldn't tell what Qin Wenjing was up to. He was thinking that when they helped him, they would also help him divert their attention so that it would be easier for him to investigate, right? She couldn't bear to see him so smug. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and said, "Isn't it just to make Tao Feng unable to investigate the whereabouts of the third young master of the Tao family? It's not difficult." "Oh, you already have an idea?" Qin Wenjing immediately looked at her with sparkling eyes. Gu Yundong was indeed Gu Yundong. She was quick-witted. "It's simple. We can just let Tao Feng know that Tao Xing has his eyes on him. No matter what Tao Feng's motive is, he definitely doesn't want others to know that he's keeping such a low profile, especially Tao Xing." Qin Wenjing was speechless. In that case it made sense. He was still struggling. "Then how do you plan to let Tao Feng know? You can't run to him personally and tell him that your secret has been exposed, right?" Gu Yundong shook her head. "I'll hire someone to follow Tao Feng for a couple of days and let him know that he's being followed. Tao Feng must be pondering who's following him. The first suspect will be Tao Xing, and Tao Xing is very confident of finding out Tao Feng's mistakes, so he's definitely not hasty. It's very abnormal that a person who's deprived of his power and who hates Tao Feng's guts should be so casual without setting up a trap for him. Yes, Tao Feng would suspect that Tao Xing knew something and followed him. As a result, Tao Feng didn't dare to do anything, especially looking for the third young master of the Tao family. To him, this was disobeying his father and grandmother. He would stop for a while and wait for Tao Xing to stop keeping an eye on him. This period of time was enough for Qin Wenjing to investigate the Tao family and find out the results. Damn it, Gu Yundong was a devil. Qin Wenjing glared at her angrily. He suddenly swung his hand and left. "Up to you." Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan looked at each other and shrugged slightly. "Why are you throwing a tantrum all of a sudden? Didn't I come up with a good idea? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 781. Chaos. To enjoy reading, Shao Qingyuan chuckled and held her hand. "Let's go back." Gu Yundong was a woman of her word. For the next 2 days, she had Mao dress up and secretly guard the Tao family's door. When Mao saw Tao Feng come out, he would quickly follow him. Gu Yundong had deliberately disguised Mao as the middle-aged man he had seen at Jinxiu restaurant that day. He had a beard, thick eyebrows, and wore a clean long robe. Upon closer inspection, Mao's original appearance could not be seen. Since the middle-aged man was with Tao Xing, Tao Feng might know him too. This made him even more certain that Tao Xing was watching him in the dark. Mao used to be a beggar, so he was very familiar with tracking people. Not only that, but 2 days later, he found another 2 people secretly following Tao Feng. They must be Tao Xing's men. However, the whereabouts of these 2 people were very secretive. If Mao didn't have a good memory and saw them 3 times in 2 days, he probably wouldn't have discovered them. Mao's whereabouts were exposed very quickly. When Tao Feng discovered him, he wanted to catch him. Unfortunately, Mao was agile and crawled around in the alley. Not long after, he entered the backyard of a restaurant and came out after changing his clothes. Tao Feng's servant returned empty-handed, but he described his appearance to Tao Feng. Tao Feng had indeed seen that middle-aged man before. He was angry, but he became much more cautious after that. Then Gu Yundong asked Mao to leave. She couldn't possibly go too far. A few days later, they heard that the Tao family's eldest young master and second young master suddenly fought one day and smashed more than 10 jars of wine that the Tao family had stored in the warehouse. Old Lady Tao was so angry that she fainted. She scolded the 2 of them and lay on the bed, unable to get up. Master Tao was so angry that he beat up his 2 sons. Mrs. Tao looked at Tao Xing's bruised face and begged for mercy in front of Master Tao. At night, she kept whispering to him. Old Master Tao was biased towards Tao Xing to begin with. He was especially dissatisfied with Tao Feng and scolded him for not knowing how to take care of his younger brother as the eldest brother. He wanted to take back the power in Tao Feng's hands. Unfortunately, after the investigation, he found out that Tao Xing was the one who provoked him first. Even if he took back the power in Tao Feng's hands, he could not hand it over to Tao Xing. He could not handle it alone. Furthermore, Tao Feng had not been living in the Tao family for nothing all these years. Old Master Tao had two favored concubines who had long been bribed by Tao Feng. In addition, they had the same interests and enemies. They were also whispering to Old Master Tao. In the end, they were both his sons, so he could only give up on this matter. Because of this, Lady Tao had secretly dealt with the two concubines. For a moment, the Tao family was in an especially busy state. Old Madame Tao was bedridden for more than half a month. However, it was said that after that, Tao Xing and Tao Feng were completely irreconcilable. Tao Xing kept a close eye on Tao Feng. He wanted to catch Tao Feng's weakness, so Tao Feng had to be careful in everything he did. He had probably stopped searching for the third young master of the Tao family. These things entered Gu Yundong's ears one after another. Although it was not very detailed, she could more or less guess the development of the situation. Gu Yundong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At least Tao Feng did not continue looking for his missing brother. However, she still had to think about how to make a contribution next. However, just as she was racking her brains, Tong Ping brought her a letter. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 782. Letter from the Prefectural City. Letter? Tong Ping had just returned from the Prefectural City, so this letter should be news from the Prefectural City. She took another look at the signature. Alright, it was written by Madame Dai and Nie Shuang. Gu Yundong thought that there was something wrong with the shop, and the two of them were asking for her ideas. She did not expect Nie Shuang's first sentence to be, "Are you planning to take root in Yongfu village, and not come to the Prefectural City?" Gu Yundong was speechless. No, definitely not. Don't talk nonsense. She continued reading. Fortunately, there was nothing important. They only mentioned the situation in the shop. Nowadays, the milk tea shop was very popular. It had become the favorite place for all the rich and young ladies in the Prefectural City. When they had nothing to do, they would come for afternoon tea. The sales of milk tea were very high, and the other snacks were very popular. There were also some rich ladies who lived far away that kept asking Madame Dai to open another shop not far from them. Madame Dai and Nie Shuang were very busy now. They left early and returned late every day. It was only when they had stabilized these few days that they finally had a chance to rest. It was just that Gu Yundong had been staying in Yongfu village and had not returned to the Prefectural City. This was a little unreasonable. Gu Yundong was a little embarrassed. Alright, she had at least received a share of the profits. It seemed that she had only been busy for a few days when the shop just opened for business. After that, she had really quit. Gu Yundong folded the letter. Tong Shuetao asked curiously, "Miss, did Madame Dai and the others write it to you? What did they say?" "They told me to hurry back to the Prefectural City," Gu Yundong said helplessly. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Gu Yunshu, who was eating at the side, run over and ask, "Eldest sister, are we going to the Prefectural City? When are we going? What should I prepare?" Gu Yundong was stunned. She looked at his flushed and excited face. She suddenly remembered that she had promised the little guy that she would bring him and Yuanji to the Prefectural City during the holidays. However, who knew that she would enter the deep mountains not long after returning to Yongfu village? After returning, she was delayed for a few days because of Nyodan. Then she was busy with Kiki's birthday. After hearing about the Tao family, she focused on the Tao family. Now the clothes-making vacation was about to end, but she had not fulfilled her promise. Gu Yundong pinched his tender face. "Yes, we'll go to the Prefectural City tomorrow morning." The child's eyes lit up. Indeed, he was even happier. He cheered and quickly ran to find Yuanji. "Cousin Yuanji, we can go to the Prefectural City. Let me tell you, the Prefectural City of Xuanhe Prefecture is very big. The city wall is very tall. More taller than 100 mi stacked together. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Then she laughed and exhaled. She put away the letter and went to the Shao family to look for Shao Qingyuan. She planned to tell him, but she did not know if brother Shao would go. Unexpectedly, Mao and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that she was going to the prefectural city. Gu Yundong was puzzled. What are you doing? You look as if I made you suffer in Yongfu village. Are you looking for a beating? No. Absolutely not. The few of them waved their hands and shook their heads. Seeing Gu Yundong narrow her eyes, Mao laughed dryly and said, Actually, young master and I had long wanted to go to the prefectural city. We have been waiting for you. Gu Yundong was stunned. Had they already planned to go to the prefectural city? Why are you going to the prefectural city? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 783. All to the prefectural city, didn't I tell you last time? Mao said, Our young master found a doctor and plans to open the shop in the prefecture capital. Gu Yundong suddenly remembered. When she heard the news about the Tao family, she couldn't wait to discuss it with Shao Qingyuan. However, he was not around at that time. He had gone to find a doctor with good medical skills and morals. That doctor was originally a doctor in a medical center in the county. However, he was very stubborn and did not know how to put in a good word. He did not know how to be flexible and did not have a good relationship with the shopkeeper or the medicine boy in the medical center. If not for his brilliant medical skills, the shopkeeper would have chased him out long ago. In the end, not long ago, another doctor with equally brilliant medical skills suddenly came to the medical center. The shopkeeper did not hesitate to kick this stubborn old doctor away. When Shao Qingyuan went to the doctor, he was unwilling to follow him to the prefectural city to see the medicine shop. It was Shao Qingyuan who said that there were more doctors in the prefectural city, and they could discuss and learn medicine from each other. In addition, Shao Qingyuan had the talent to learn medicine. This was the main reason why the doctor agreed in the end. In that case, Shao Qingyuan was going to the prefecture capital at that time? She slapped her forehead. Why didn't you guys warn me? Mao said aggrievedly. It's because you're busy and you're troubled by young master's matters. How can we disturb you again? Gu Yundong was speechless. So although Yunshu and the others all wanted to go to the prefectural city, they did not mention it because she was troubled? Actually, even if she was paying attention to the Tao residents and didn't leave Yongfu village, others could still go to the prefectural city. However, after thinking about it, it was impossible. All of them saw that she was troubled all day and could not leave in peace. Gu Yundong's heart ached and swelled. It was a little bitter and warm. Qin Wenjing was investigating the Tao family now, so Tao Feng and Tao Xing did not have the energy to look for Shao Qingyuan. Then she would go to the prefectural city to take a look. She couldn't just leave the shop alone. Especially the milk tea shop. Ever since it opened, she had not gone over to take a look. Thus, Gu Yundong waved her hand and brought her entire family to the prefectural city tomorrow. The children happily began to pack their things. The next morning, they set off in a mighty manner. Looking at the excited Gu Yunshu and Bian Yuanji, Gu Yundong also relaxed. Forget it. Let's put the matter of the Tao family aside first. The carriage arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture in the evening. Yuanji looked at the city wall in front of him and weighed it slightly. He thought to himself that he didn't need 100 yuanshus to reach its height. After entering the city gate, although it was already a little late, compared to the county city, the prefectural city was still very lively. Yunshu and Yuanji stuck their necks out and squeezed by the window. They were dazzled. Sister, where is our shop? It's still a few streets away, Gu Yundong said. Kiki had also woken up, and she rubbed her eyes and squeezed over. The three little heads almost squeezed each other into a meat patty. She wanted to laugh. The carriage finally arrived an hour later. As Shui Rong was the first to ride back and give instructions, when Gu Yundong and his family arrived home, the food was already hot. Yunshu and Yuanji bounced around in the courtyard. Eldest sister, is this our home? Cousin, where is the milk tea shop? Shall we go tomorrow? Yes, I'll bring you to the shop tomorrow. Just as Gu Yundong agreed, Lu Sheng whispered, Miss, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to go on the streets tomorrow. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 784. Father, you don't understand. The smile on Gu Yundong's face froze. What's wrong? What's going to happen tomorrow? Lu Sheng nodded. The entire city will be under martial law tomorrow. This time, not only Gu Yundong but even Gu Dajiang stopped. Why? Tomorrow, a group of prisoners will be paraded on the streets and dragged to the entrance of the market to be executed. Master and Miss came back at the right time. If you come tomorrow, I'm afraid you wouldn't even be able to enter the city tomorrow. This was the first time Gu Yundong had encountered such a thing. If the culprits were to be executed, she could not walk around. Lu Sheng continued. Although they want pass by the entrances of the two shops, there are too many people and it's rather chaotic. Gu Yundong looked at Yunshu and Yuanji. They were still young. In fact, she did not object to bringing the children to watch the parade. After all, they were already literate in school and would probably have to take an official career in the future. There was nothing to avoid. However, she was afraid that the scene would be too chaotic and someone would take the opportunity to steal the children. In particular, who knew if someone would try to rescue the prisoners? If there were too many people, it was easy to get injured from stepping. So let's wait for them to grow up a little. When the two of them heard that they could not go out on the streets, they were immediately disappointed. After all, their vacation was not long anymore. Every day counted. However, they also knew that they would definitely add trouble tomorrow. Therefore, they could only nod obediently. However, the excitement from before had already disappeared, and they were a little tired. Lu Sheng was a little vexed. He felt that he had done something wrong. He should not have brought it up at this time. But Gu Yundong stepped forward and put her arm around their shoulders. It's nothing serious. Even if we can't go out on the streets tomorrow, we can still walk around this area, right? This area is not far from Tianhai Academy. The people living nearby are all scholars. You can meet one every 2 steps you take. There are also many students around your age. Perhaps you can make friends. When the two of them heard this, they were instantly interested. Can we play nearby? Sure. There's a child next door. Kiki knows him. I'll get Kiki to bring you guys there tomorrow. The little girl immediately nodded and patted her chest hard. Yes, follow me and you'll have food to eat. Gu Yundong knocked her on the head. Who did you learn these words from? Ago, who was standing at the back, shrunk his head silently. You can't see me, you can't see me, you can't see me. Yunshu and Yuanji finally became happy again. The two of them surrounded Kiki and asked questions. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang looked at each other before shrugging and going to eat. After all, they were tired from sitting in the carriage all day. After dinner, they returned to their rooms to rest. Shao Qingyuan brought Mao and the others back to the shop he had bought. The next morning, Gu Yundong put on her clothes and prepared to go out. Unexpectedly, when she opened the door, Gu Dajiang was already standing outside. Gu Yundong was speechless. She laughed dryly. Good morning, father. Gu Dajiang snorted. It's rare for you to wake up so early. It looks like you don't want to wake anyone up. Why? Where are you going? Gu Yundong saw his understanding expression and decided not to beat around the bush. I just want to see the streets. Beheading? What's there to see? Gu Yundong sighed slightly. Father, you don't understand. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 785. A peaceful life for a good person. Then tell me and I'll understand. Seeing this, Gu Yundong immediately said righteously, I'm watching the parade to warn myself. Father, you know that my business is expanding and am interacting with more people. My life will definitely get better in the future. I'm afraid that money will corrupt my heart and I'll lose myself, so I'm going to see what happens to those bad people. I'm always telling myself to be a good person. A good person would have a peaceful life. Gu Dajiang was stunned. He looked at Gu Yundong for a long time and said in relief, I didn't expect you to have such awareness at such a young age. Gu Yundong nodded solemnly. She did not expect her to explain the word curiosity so eloquently. Father, I'll set off then. Wait. Gu Dajiang waved his hand and said, the weather is cold. Go back to your room and put on more clothes before going out. Gu Yundong was not actually cold, but there was a kind of coldness because your father felt that you were cold, so she obediently went back and added a cloak. Unexpectedly, when she was about to go out, her father also brought a coat and followed her. You're right. Not only do you need to be vigilant, but I also need to be vigilant. I'm a scholar, and I don't know how far I'll go in the future. In the future, I have to educate Yunshu and the others. I should stay sober. I'll go with you to take a look. Gu Yundong was speechless. Father, why are you so self-aware? She sighed inwardly. In the end, she went out and got into the carriage. Shui Rong was already waiting there. Gu Yundong finally instructed Aunt Neo, who was making breakfast. Later, tell Shuetao and Hongxiu to take good care of the children. Don't worry, Eldest Mississippi'll help them take care of Madam and the others. Only then did Gu Yundong lift the curtain and get into the carriage with Gu Dajiang. It was still early, and there were not many people on the streets. However, the courtyard was a little far from the entrance of the market. The prisoners would walk from the cell to the market entrance, but they would walk very slowly and take a detour in the middle. When the carriage reached the main road not far from the entrance of the market, the number of people on the street gradually increased. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang had breakfast at a wonton stall. There were also many people in the stall. They seemed to be here to watch the parade. Gu Yundong also did not understand why everyone was so passionate about such things. What was there to see? It wasn't like her, who had come to broaden her horizons because she had never seen it before. After dinner, Gu Yundong entered a nearby tea house and booked a table on the second floor. Fortunately, she came early. Otherwise, there wouldn't even be a seat here. It was said that someone had come to reserve a seat a few days ago. Gu Yundong was speechless. It was not the parade of a top scholar. Why so many people? She shook her head and drank her tea while waiting. She also took a look at the scenery downstairs. She had never been to this area before. In her memory, she seemed to have passed by it once. Looking out from the second floor, she actually saw a slightly familiar figure coming out of a mansion. Steward Zhou? Could it be that the mansion was, coincidentally, a waiter from the tea house brought over a plate of peanuts? Gu Yundong pointed in that direction. Buddy, which family is that? Following her finger, the shop assistant smiled. That's the Zhou mansion. Zhou mansion. Sure enough, it was Zhou Dafa's house. It turned out that his residence was in this area. Speaking of which, Steward Zhou had messed up such a big matter last time, but he had not been chased away by Zhou Dafu. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 786. She's not a devil. Gu Yundong watched as Steward Zhou walked over. Not long after, he walked into the tea house and hurriedly went upstairs. He seemed to be here to reserve a seat, but just as he was about to speak to the waiter, he saw Gu Yundong, who was sitting on the second floor and looking at him with a faint smile. Steward Zhou's expression changed drastically. He turned around and left. Gu Yundong was instantly amused. She was not a devil, and this was not his territory or his tea house. Would she not be allowed to sit here? Steward Zhou left the tea house and looked up. Unexpectedly, his eyes met Gu Yundong's. His face turned pale, and he hurriedly ran back to the Zhou residence. Gu Yundong was speechless. Ever since Steward Zhou entered the residence, no one had come out from that door. Of course, she couldn't see the back door of the Zhou mansion, and she didn't know if they would use the back door. Gu Yundong could not help but rub her nose. It seemed that he was so scared that he did not even dare to leave the house. It was simply a sin. As she was thinking, she suddenly heard exclamations. Coming, coming. Gu Dajiang also said. The prison vans are here. Gu Yundong no longer paid attention to the Zhou mansion. She looked at the 3 prison vans passing by the street downstairs. There was only one person in the first 2 prison carts, but there were 3 people squatting in the last one. This time, these 5 people were the ones who were to be executed. The prison carts were extremely slow, so it did not stop the onlookers by the roadside from throwing mud and rotten leaves at them. The people at the table next to Gu Yundong were chatting. They were talking about the death row prisoners in the prison cart. Serves them right. This kind of evil bandit should have been executed long ago. Someone seemed to not know the identities of the prisoners and asked, Are these bandits? What else? Those who knew looked indignant. You haven't forgotten what happened in Qingyuan Prefecture last year, right? Back then, the bandit leader barged into the government office and even dared to kill the officials. They also robbed all the rich families in the city. What's even more abominable is that they didn't let go of those innocent citizens. They killed everyone they saw. They're worse than beasts. They used the refugees outside the city at that time to incite the refugees to break into the prefectural city, so that they could fish in troubled waters and do all kinds of bad things. Fortunately, Commander Zhou of our Shuanhe prefecture led troops to quell the chaos back then. They killed and captured a lot of criminals, but that bandit leader still escaped. It was not easy for him to run to our Shuanhe prefecture until he was captured. The 5 people who were executed today were the remnants of that group of bandits. They were arrested one after another in the past year. Do you see the men in the 2 prison carts in front? Those 2 are small leaders. I heard that they killed a few people during the robbery. The last 3 aren't good people either. They're all ruthless people who do bad things. As he spoke, the person suddenly lowered his voice and whispered, I also heard that someone might come to rescue the prisoners today. Everyone was shocked. Someone might come to rescue the prisoners? Then how dare you come out here to watch the commotion? That person snorted softly. What's there to be afraid of? The government office has already sent people to the surrounding area with many soldiers. It's fine if they don't come to rescue the prisoners. As long as they come, they won't be able to return. We're on the 2nd floor of this tea house. We're safe. Gu Yundong was speechless. You're amazing. You even know about the government office. Moreover, the 2nd floor is not safe at all. She and Gu Dajiang looked at each other. So this was the identity of the prisoner downstairs. Speaking of which, they had an ill-fated encounter with the father and daughter. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 787. The woman who suddenly fell. The streets were still filled with voices and curses. The few prisoners had probably suffered a lot in the cell. Now they could be beaten and scolded as they pleased, as if they were numb puppets. However, they were only a kilometer away from the entrance of the market. If someone really came to rescue the prisoners, they should have come. Otherwise, they would have to go to the entrance of the market and shout for the executioners to hold back. Unfortunately, even when the prison carts gradually disappeared, no one seemed to be rescuing the prisoners. The young man in the tea house who had previously made a solemn vow laughed dryly and said, Maybe there might be an ambush at the entrance of the market. Why don't we go to the entrance of the market to take a look? No, if there's really an ambush, what if we suffer? Gu Dajiang also heard the conversation and nodded repeatedly. He said sternly to Gu Yundong, You're not allowed to go either. Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. I don't plan to go. Let's just wait for the news. They'll be executed at noon. We can go back after lunch. Gu Dajiang was relieved. He was really afraid that his daughter would go and watch the beheading in order to warn herself. It was so bloody and not suitable for girls to see. It was because of this that he had to follow her out. Gu Yundong and his daughter were not the only ones. There were not many people on the 2nd floor who left after watching the commotion. They seemed to be waiting for noon, causing the entire teahouse's business to be exceptionally good. The crowd downstairs had already dispersed. Some went to the entrance of the market, while others went home after watching the commotion and throwing the rotten vegetables. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang drank tea and waited until noon. They also ordered a few dishes. When it was time, someone quickly ran over and said, "Those bandits have been executed." That's great, that's great. Cheers instantly erupted in the tea house. Gu Yundong was shocked. She saw that many people's faces revealed expressions of relief. Some people's eyes even turned red, and they clenched their fists tightly. She instantly understood that everyone hated this kind of bandit who committed all kinds of evil. Gu Yundong also smiled happily. After settling the bill with Gu Dajiang, she got up and went downstairs. Shuirong went to bring the carriage over. While Gu Yundong and Shuirong were waiting downstairs, many people came down from the second floor. The entrance of the tea house suddenly became crowded. In addition, many people had returned from watching the commotion at the entrance of the market. There were suddenly many more people on the streets. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They should have left later. Now, they could only hope that Shuirong would bring the carriage over as soon as possible. Just as they were thinking about it, she saw Shuirong walking over. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. After helping Gu Dajiang into the carriage, she asked Shuirong to leave quickly and go home. Unexpectedly, just as Shuirong pulled the reins and before the horse could take a step, a person suddenly staggered out and fell straight in front of the carriage. Shuirong was speechless. "You can't play like this. If you want to extort me, at least wait until my carriage starts to move." There were so many people watching. They could all testify that you fell down yourself. The person who fell to the ground was a woman with a bag in her hand. When she fell just now, everything in the bag fell out, and a few even rolled under the carriage. She picked them up in a hurry, panic on her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'll pick them up now." Shuirong was stunned. She's not here to extort. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 788. Is this her aunt? The carriage did not move for a long time. Gu Yundong lifted the curtain and looked outside. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Shuirong pointed ahead and said, "Someone fell out. There should be a lot of people and she was squeezed out." After saying that, the people who had been squeezing around hurriedly stood far away, as if they were afraid that this person would cling to them. Gu Yundong looked at the person. She looked like a thin woman. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were very tattered. The weather was already a little cold, but her clothes were still very thin. They hung loosely on her body, making her look like a refugee when Gu Yundong entered the city last year. More importantly, Gu Yundong saw some scars on her thin arms. She held an old bag in her hand, and squatted on the ground to pick up the wooden carvings scattered nearby. Yes, they were all wooden carvings. They were very small. There were wooden hairpins, spinning tops for children, and small boxes. The most exquisite one was the small screen that had fallen out but was already broken. Gu Yundong had just finished looking when Gu Dajiang alighted from the carriage. He squatted down and helped pick up the wooden carvings on the ground. Shuirong and Gu Yundong also hurriedly got down. A few of the wooden carvings rolled further away, and Shuirong crawled under the carriage. Gu Dajiang stuffed all the wooden carvings in his hand into Gu Yundong's hand. The latter carried them to the woman. "Auntie, this is for you. Keep it well. Be careful." Thank you, Mississippi." The woman opened the bag and placed the wooden carvings inside with trembling fingers. Then she kept apologizing. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to fall in front of your carriage. I've wasted your time. I'll leave now. Thank you." As she spoke, she turned around and staggered forward. Gu Yundong sighed softly and turned to return to the carriage. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she saw Gu Dajiang standing rooted to the ground in shock. Then he suddenly took 2 steps forward and grabbed the woman's arm. Gu Yundong was shocked. "Father, what are you doing?" The woman was also frightened. She lowered her head and wanted to avoid him, but Gu Dajiang was strong. Not to mention that this woman was skinny and weak. Even if she were strong, she wouldn't be able to break free. She was being pulled by a man in public. How could she not be embarrassed? What are you doing? Let go of me. Someone was already looking over. Gu Yundong quickly stepped forward to block the two of them, and pulled Gu Dajiang's hand away. Father, what are you doing? Let's talk nicely. Gu Dajiang stared at the woman with anticipation and fear in his eyes. His throat was dry. After a long time he said in a hoarse voice, "You raise your head for me to see." Chapter 789. Brother and Sister Reunion. Gu Yundong had a deep breath, took a few quick steps, and suddenly stood in front of the woman. The woman kept her head lowered and never looked up. Hence, she did not notice what she looked like previously. Gu Dajiang could tell her identity from her voice. They had been siblings for many years. He was too familiar with his sister. "Dafeng, you're Gu Dafeng, right?" Gu Dajiang also walked over quickly. He didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. He was afraid that she wasn't Gu Dafeng, afraid that the hope that he had painstakingly ignited would be extinguished again. Finally, the woman slowly raised her head, trembling. That familiar face made Gu Dajiang's eyes turn red and his body tremble. Gu Dafeng saw Gu Dajiang clearly and tears streamed down her face. "Dajiang, are you Dajiang?" There was also a look of disbelief on her face. It was as if everything was a dream. Gu Dafeng reached out, wanting to touch her but not daring to. In front of her was Gu Dajiang. He had the same face as before. No, he looked much better than before, and had gained a lot of weight. However, the clothes he was wearing were worlds apart from before. She did not dare to recognize him or believe her eyes. A gust of wind blew over. It was unknown if it was cold or shocking, but Gu Dafeng's body trembled violently. Seeing this, Gu Yundong quickly took off his cloak and put it on her. Gu Dafeng couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. "Brother, you're my brother. You're really my brother. I've finally seen you." "Boo-hoo," she cried sadly. Gu Yundong hugged her tightly and felt the touch of bones under her cloak. She knew that her eldest aunt must have had a very difficult time over the past year. "Sister." Gu Dajiang's tears fell uncontrollably. "We finally found you. We finally found you." "Boo-hoo," Gu Dafeng only cried. All the grievances and suppressed pain in her heart were released, making her unable to say a word. The surrounding people looked at each other. What was going on? Was this a reunion between siblings? It actually looked a little sad. Judging from the way this family were dressed, they must be living well. However, from the woman's appearance, it could be seen that she had suffered a lot. Some people looked over and whispered to each other, making guesses. Gu Yundong frowned and said to Gu Dajiang, "Father, let's get into the carriage and go back first." Gu Dajiang nodded repeatedly. "Sister, come get in the carriage first. It's windy and cold outside." Gu Dafeng shook her head repeatedly as she cried, "Boo. No, I can't. Your brother-in-law." Before she could finish speaking, her breath dissipated. Her legs went weak and she fainted. "Eldest aunt, what's wrong?" Fortunately, Gu Yundong had been supporting her. Otherwise, she would have fallen to the ground. Chapter 790. Still alive. How great! Gu Dajiang heaved a sigh of relief, but when he thought of how the doctor had said that she hadn't eaten for a long time, he frowned again. He wondered where his sister had been for the past year or so, and what kind of life she had led. And brother-in-law. By the way, brother-in-law, Gu Dajiang thought of the wooden carvings. His brother-in-law used to be a carpenter. These wooden carvings should have been carved by his brother-in-law. Back then, he had gotten off the carriage to help pick them up because he had seen the wooden carvings. In that case, his brother-in-law was still alive. However, their life was probably not easy. Still, at least they were alive. Gu Dajiang heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the unconscious Gu Dafeng and felt very uneasy. "Father, I'll go to the restaurant next door to buy a bowl of porridge. When eldest aunt wakes up, I'll fill her stomach and warm her up," Gu Yundong said softly. Gu Dajiang looked up. Thank you. Not at all. Finding eldest aunt is more important than anything else. She smiled and ran out of the clinic. The crowd had already dispersed. Gu Yundong entered the restaurant next door and ordered a bowl of hot porridge and stir-fried some side dishes. People who had not eaten for a long time should not eat greasy food, so she only made 2 vegetarian dishes with minced meat. When she returned with the food box, eldest Aunt Gu was still unconscious. Gu Dajiang frowned at the side, deep in thought. Father, what's wrong? Gu Dajiang sighed slightly and stood up to pull Gu Yundong to the side. He said in a low voice, I'm afraid that she won't be able to take it if I tell her about Mulan. Gu Yundong thought for a moment. Then let's not talk about it for now. Well, tell eldest aunt when she gets better. Sai, that's good too. With Yuanji around, your aunt can be stronger. Gu Yundong felt that. Actually, father, you don't have to worry too much. Ever since we escaped last year, there have been too many such things. In the past year or so, I think eldest aunt and eldest uncle have already prepared for the worst. Although that was the case, before confirming the news, they could still comfort themselves and say that they had a glimmer of hope. As the father and daughter were talking, a faint voice suddenly came from behind. The two of them hurriedly turned around and saw that eldest Aunt Gu had indeed woken up. She looked dazed, as if she hadn't registered where she was or remembered what had happened before she had passed out. However, when Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong stood in front of her, she said with a trembling voice, I'm not dreaming. Brother, it's really you. Gu Dajiang sat on a chair at the side. It's me, sister. I'm Dajiang. You're not dreaming. Gu Yundong obediently greeted. Aunt. Yundong, it's Yundong. She reached out and grabbed Gu Yundong's hand tightly. But compared to Gu Yundong's delicate hands, eldest Aunt Gu's hands were so thin that they looked like bones. Gu Yundong felt a little sad. Aunt, the doctor said that you haven't eaten for a long time. I bought porridge. Eat something to fill your stomach first, and then we can talk nicely, okay? Gu Dajiang had already taken out a bowl and spoon. He scooped a mouthful and handed it over. Tears welled up in the corners of Gu Daifeng's eyes. She choked up a little and nodded. Then she opened her mouth and took a bite. After swallowing the soft porridge, she seemed to warm up. Looking at her brother in front of her, Gu Daifeng wanted to cry and laugh. It was great that her brother was still alive and her niece was fine. She didn't even dare to think about meeting them again in the past. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 792. She's old Master Zhou's concubine. She could not understand why her eldest aunt was so pessimistic. Why did she not seem to have any hope at all? It was just freeing 2 servants. Unexpectedly, Gu Daifeng shook her head and smiled bitterly. She won't agree. She won't agree. She? Gu Yundong frowned. Who is she? Zhou Dafu? If Zhou Dafu didn't agree, she would rush to the Zhou residence to beat him up. No, it's not Zhou Dafu. Gu Daifeng's fingers trembled slightly, and her face was a little pale, as if she found it difficult to speak. After a long time, she looked at Gu Dajiang steadily and said in a light voice, Yes, it's Gu Qiuyue. We're Gu Qi's servants now. She won't agree. Gu Dajiang and Gu Yundong looked at her in disbelief, suspecting that there was something wrong with their ears. Gu Qiuyue? Gu Yundong murmured. Isn't Gu Qiuyue dead? Back then, it was Fu Ming who told her personally that other than him, Gu Qiuyue, their daughter, and their parents had all died in the chaos. But now, eldest aunt was telling them that Gu Qiuyue was still alive. Not only was she alive, but she also seemed to be living quite well. Gu Dajiang calmed down a little, and his expression became especially solemn. He looked at Gu Daifeng and said, Sister, tell me exactly what happened. What did she mean by Gu Qi's servants? This was ridiculous. They were Gu Qi's elder sister and brother-in-law. How could she make her elder sister and brother-in-law sign a slave contract and become her servants? What was she thinking? Gu Dafeng looked at his sullen face and paused for a moment. In the end she still said, Gu Qingyuan is now old Master Zhou's concubine. Damn it. Even Gu Yundong admired her. Gu Qingyuan was someone who had been married and had children. How could that old man, Zhou Dafu, take her in as his concubine? Gu Dafeng was talking about what happened last year. Last year, they had fled to Qingyuan Prefecture. However, when they were about to reach Qingyuan Prefecture, they were separated from their children and in-laws. At that time, they didn't have time to say anything. They didn't even think of where to meet up. It was already good enough that they could save their lives in such a hurry. Gu Dafeng and his husband could only head to the Qingyuan Prefecture that was closest to them. They were a step too late. The Qingyuan Prefecture was already in chaos, and the city gate was wide open. Seeing this, the couple wanted to go elsewhere. Unexpectedly, this chaos affected the city gate. The soldiers who came to reinforce the Qingyuan Prefecture fought with the bandits. The fight was very intense. Before they could dodge, Bianhan's legs were broken by the bandits who had rushed out on their horses to escape. Gu Dafeng looked at her husband, who was in so much pain that he was about to die. She was completely at a loss. Chapter 793. Be My Servants. Gu Dafeng and Gu Qingyuan didn't have a good relationship in the past. It was just that the age difference was a little big. Coupled with the fact that they were already married, they rarely met. However, no matter what their relationship was in the past, Gu Dafeng was really happy to meet her family at this time. However, Gu Qingyuan clearly did not think so. For some reason, she had become the concubine of a rich family with the surname Zhou in the prefectural city of Qingyuan Prefecture. Furthermore, she seemed to be very doted on. When she saw Gu Dafeng like that, she only felt happy. However, she was not as happy as someone who met their relatives in a foreign land. Especially when she saw Gu Dafeng's desolate appearance and Bianhan's almost hopeless legs. Gu Qingyuan originally wanted to ignore them. She turned around and left as if she didn't know them. However, she returned not long after and looked at them with a condescending expression. Gu Dafeng, are you trying to save your husband? If you beg me, I'll find a doctor to treat his legs and give him medicine so that you can both survive. Gu Dafeng knew that Gu Qingyuan had gone overboard, but looking at her dying husband, she knelt down and begged her without a word. There was nothing else she could do but beg her. Gu Qingyuan was indeed very happy. She laughed until her entire body was trembling. She squatted down and her eyes were filled with malice. All right, I'll save him, but you'll sell yourselves and sign a contract to become my servants. How about that? Gu Dafeng was shocked. Gu Qingyuan wanted them to be servants? Of course she was unhappy, but at this point, Gu Dafeng could only accept her fate. Moreover, a day ago, she was actually thinking of selling herself to exchange for her husband's life. But now there were refugees everywhere. How many people would put a straw on their heads and sell themselves just to have a bite to eat? This kind of person who did not seem to be a burden and looked like a laborer did not have many buyers. Forget it, she was already prepared to sell herself anyway. Now her master had just changed to Gu Qingyuan. Other than feeling disgusted, there was no other difference. Gu Dafeng agreed and pressed her thumbprint on the indenture along with the unconscious Bianhan. Then, she quietly followed Gu Qingyuan back to the Zhou mansion. As expected, Gu Qingyuan found a doctor to treat Bianhan's legs. However, this doctor's medical skills were not good. Not only did she make Bianhan suffer, but his legs were also not completely cured. However, his legs were no longer swollen and pus was no longer flowing out. The high fever on his body had also subsided. No matter what, his life was saved. That was enough. Nothing else mattered. However, what followed was eldest Aunt Gus' calamity. Gu Dafeng stayed in the backyard for a while, and got someone to bring back some wood that others did not want, as well as 2 carving knives. Mrs. Ren did see it, but she saw that Bianhan's carving was quite good looking. Anyway, as long as they did not cause trouble, It was fine to carve some things. Mrs. Ren even took Father Bien's carvings to sell. Although the price was not high, she still earned some extra income. Because of this, Mrs. Ren turned a blind eye and even helped to persuade Gu Qiuyue when she found out. That was why she didn't let Gu Qiuyue take their things away. However, what Mrs. Ren did gave Gu Dafeng some inspiration. If she could sell them, could she do the same? Although they were said to be Gu Qi's servants, they were different from ordinary servants. They did not have any monthly allowance. Gu Qiuyue said that she had already paid their monthly allowance for Bien Han's treatment in advance, so they had done the work for nothing. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 795. Fate is indescribably wonderful. Gu Dafeng needed money. She knew that no matter where she was, she could not do anything without money. For example, if she had money in the backyard of the Zhou mansion, she could at least find someone to bring them some food and not starve. Just like Mrs. Ren. Although she was Gu Qi's confidant, she had her own interests and could still make things easier for them. Therefore, after Bien Han carved those gadgets again, Gu Dafeng would secretly hide some. The rest would be taken away by Mrs. Ren. In order to earn this extra income, Mrs. Ren even found wood for them. Anyway, it was just a small matter. Bien Han was her free labor. Bien Han's movements were fast and the carvings were beautiful. Gu Dafeng had actually already saved up a bag of money, but it was a pity that she could not leave the residence. Mrs. Ren was very strict in this aspect. The courtyard where Gu Qiuyue lived was filled with her people, and the place where they lived was tightly guarded. Just as Gu Dafeng was feeling a little dejected, an opportunity suddenly came. The servant who watched over them today did not pay attention, and left without locking the door completely. Gu Dafeng ran out secretly. She had also heard that old Master Zhou had left the residence to watch the parade. Not only him, but Gu Qiuyue had also gone out. Mrs. Ren was not around either. Moreover, the place they were going was relatively far from the Zhou mansion. It would probably be afternoon when they returned. Gu Yundong thought of Steward Zhou, whom she had met in the tea house. She had not seen Steward Zhou come out of the main door since she went back. Now that she knew that Zhou Dafu had gone out, he must have gone out through the back door. Moreover, because she was here, he was afraid that it would be awkward if they bumped into each other, so he went further away to watch the commotion. What could she say? Was fate indescribably wonderful? So, eldest aunt took advantage of their absence to sell all the wooden carvings in this bag? Gu Dafeng nodded and looked at the bag beside her. She said in a low voice, "Unfortunately, none of them were sold. When everyone saw me like this, they thought I was a beggar. Before I could speak, they all had run away." Gu Dafeng's clothes were from her hometown. Gu Qiuyue had never given them clothes to wear. She always said that they were doing rough work anyway. It would be a waste to give them good clothes. They did not have to go out, so there was nothing to worry about. Therefore, even though she had washed her clothes and tidied her hair, she was still avoided by pedestrians. The wooden carvings couldn't be sold, and someone accidentally pushed her in front of someone's carriage. At that moment, Gu Dafeng's heart was filled with despair. Chapter 796. "Oh, bring uncle back." Gu Dajiang's eyes turned red when he heard that. He held his sister's hand and said, "With me around in the future, you can be at ease. I won't let you suffer like this again." Then he gritted his teeth. "Gu Qiuyue, this beast. Previously, she lied to me that Yundong and the rest went to Wanqing Prefecture. Now, she's using all means to torture your own sister and brother-in-law." He looked at Gu Yundong. "I'll go to the Zhou mansion and personally bring brother-in-law out. You take care of your aunt." Gu Dafeng quickly pulled him back. "Brother, don't be rash. The Zhou family is not an ordinary family. You'll suffer if you go." Gu Yundong also stopped him. "Father, don't go. I'll go to the Zhou mansion." "You can't go either. Yundong, you don't know." Gu Dafeng wanted to stop her. Gu Yundong shook her head. "It's all right, aunt. I know old Master Zhou. Eldest Aunt Gu was stunned. You know old Master Zhou? That's right. Not only do we know each other, but we also have some ties. When my shop opened, he gave me a huge gift, Gu Yundong said meaningfully. So don't worry. Even if Gu Qiuyue doesn't agree to let you go, she is Zhou Dafu's concubine. As long as Zhou Dafu agrees, it's useless for her to object. Gu Dafeng was stunned. Yundong had opened a shop? Old Master Zhou had even sent a congratulatory gift? They actually knew each other? Gu Yundong said to Gu Dajiang, Father, I've interacted more with old Master Zhou and know his personality. It's more suitable for me to ask him for her. You haven't met Zhou Dafu before. He doesn't know you. If he's unwilling to see you, you won't be able to ask for anything. Most importantly, if Gu Qiuyue finds out, it'll be disadvantageous for us if she's on guard. Gu Dajiang frowned. Although he wanted to teach Gu Qiuyue a lesson personally, what Yundong said made sense. Hence she nodded. All right, nothing else is important. The most important thing is to bring your uncle out and get the indenture. Yes, I know. Gu Yundong smiled. Eldest aunt, rest well. I will reunite your family. Gu Dafeng was still very worried. Her niece was only 15 years old, and she used to be a timid girl who did not speak much. Zhou Dafu was a businessman. He had been in the business world for a long time and had a big estate. Such a person was an old fox. Although she had never interacted with Zhou Dafu, she knew that he was not a good person. Yundong was so beautiful, yet Zhou Dafu had taken a fancy to Gu Qiuyue. What if he had designs on Yundong? Gu Dafeng's mind was in a mess, and her imagination was running wild. However, Gu Yundong had already stood up. She looked around and said to Gu Dajiang, Father, this is a medical center after all. It's not convenient to stay here for long. Take eldest aunt to the inn beside and get a good room. Let eldest aunt rest and recuperate. Gu Dajiang thought about it and agreed. He helped Gu Dafeng stand up. On the other hand, Gu Dafeng shook her head. Isn't it a waste of money? It's the same even if I wait outside. Gu Dajiang disagreed and insisted on bringing her to a nearby inn. Gu Yundong specially went to the ready-made clothing store and bought 2 sets of clothes. One was for eldest Aunt Gu and the other was for his uncle. Then, she handed eldest Aunt Gu to her father and went out herself. She walked to the carriage and jumped up. Shui Rong, who was on the carriage shaft, asked, Miss, where are we going? The Zhou residence? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 797. Finding help. Gu Yundong was also thinking about where to go. Of course, it was most important to go straight to the Zhou residence, but Zhou Dafu. After a few interactions, Gu Yundong finally knew what kind of person this person was. He was someone who would trample on you to death whenever he found an opportunity. Back then, when he wanted her shop, he didn't know much about her and Shao Qingyuan. He only knew that he couldn't beat them and ran away. In the end, after investigating them, he found out that the 2 of them were just poor people from the countryside who had no backing. He immediately wanted to destroy them on the day of the opening. Even if such a person saw that the people who came to deliver the congratulatory gifts were either rich or noble when the shop opened, and knew that she was not someone without a backer, once he knew that the family she cared about was in the Zhou mansion, he would be smug. Not only would he not let him go, but he would also take her aunt and uncle into his hands and obtain endless benefits from her. For example, getting in touch with the Nye family. If Gu Qiuyue, the troublemaker, was included, Gu Yundong felt that she would be sucked dry by Zhou Dafu in the future. Therefore, he could not look for her so directly. Gu Yundong sat in the carriage and did not speak. His mind was racing. After a while, she narrowed her eyes and said to Shui Rong, who was outside, Go to the Dai residence. This place was not far from the government office, so the Dai residence was also nearby. Although Shui Rong did not know what Miss wanted to do, he immediately turned his horse around, shook the reins, and quickly headed for the Dai residence. Gu Yundong had never been to the Dai residence before. Previously, she had met Madame Dai at the milk tea shop. This was the first time she had visited. However, Madame Dai had told her that if she wanted to visit, she could just tell the concierge. She had instructed the concierge not to stop her. Thus, after Gu Yundong announced her identity, the concierge immediately led her inside. Madame Dai happened to be at home today. When she saw Gu Yundong enter, her face was filled with surprise. Yundong, you're finally in the prefectural city. It seems that I sent the right letter to you. I should have urged you to come back earlier. Gu Yundong smiled and greeted her. Madame Dai held her hand and walked in. All right. There's no need to be so polite. You came at the right time. I have a lot to tell you. Come in quickly. I'll get someone to serve tea. Gu Yundong quickly pulled her back. Auntie, wait. I came here today for something. Is something wrong? Yes, it's an urgent matter, Gu Yundong said solemnly. Seeing this, Madame Dai's expression turned solemn. Do you think there's a problem with the shop? Chapter 798. The petty Dai Wenhuo. Hence, Madame Dai quickly asked the maidservant to look for Dai Wenhuo. What a coincidence. Wenhuo happened to be at home today. Today was the day that the bandits were going to be executed. There was indeed news that there might be accomplices coming to rescue the prisons, so Dai Wenhuo secretly deployed people to keep an eye on the few people who were to be executed. Unexpectedly, there was nothing unusual. The bandits did not come. Dai Wenhuo waited for the bandits to be beheaded before returning home. Just as he finished eating and changed his clothes, he heard his mother call him over. Dai Wenhuo quickly packed up and went to pay his respects to his mother. Then he saw Gu Yundong standing there. He was stunned for a while before Madame Dai said, "Come quickly. Yundong is looking for you. She has something important to discuss." As she spoke, Madame Dai left, leaving Dai Wenhuo and Dajiang behind. Dajiang nodded. Miss Gu. Gu Yundong nodded at him and walked to Dai Wenhuo. I want to ask you for a favor. Dai Wenhuo dug his ears. Who did you say you were asking for help? This guy. He must have hated her for not sharing the porridge with him when they were deep in the mountains. What a petty man. Please, Dai Wenhuo. Forget it. She was a magnanimous person. She would let him be smug for 2 days. Dai Wenhuo finally knew that this was a private matter. Since it was not serious, he was not in a hurry. He raised his eyebrows and asked again. I didn't hear you clearly. Say it again. Dajiang, who was standing behind him, shouted in his heart. Young master, where's your grace? Do you not want that brother of yours, young master Shao? Why are you making things difficult for Miss Gu like this? Moreover, Miss Gu will definitely take revenge in the future. It won't do you any good to act rashly. Gu Yundong secretly took a deep breath and put on a fake smile. It's fine if you didn't hear me clearly. If your house wasn't close, I wouldn't have come to look for you. But it seems that I found the wrong person. After all, you're deaf. I'm afraid you can't help much. Goodbye. Her first choice was the steward of the Nie residence, all right? Zhou Dafu wanted to cozy up to the Nie residence, and it was said that he had treated the steward to several meals. However, the Nie residence was far away. Furthermore, she was not as familiar with the steward as she was with Dai Wenhuo. Unexpectedly, Dai Wenhuo was nothing. She turned around and was about to leave when Dai Wenhuo suddenly stood up from his chair. Wait. He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Gu Yundong. Forget it. For Shao Qingyuan's sake, just tell me what it is. I'll help you. I don't want him to fight me to the death if you run to him and cry. He didn't say that he wouldn't help. This woman really didn't have any patience.